And we are live. Welcome to the MLB Deeper Dive. It is Friday, August 27th. I am Josh Engelman. I'm joined by Adam Scher. Don't adjust those dials. This is a different show than 4 hours ago, although a lot of it is going to sound the same. Be sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, all that good stuff. And shout out to OddsShopper for being the presenting sponsor of this show. Anything interesting happened to you, Adam, in the past few hours?
No, nothing comes to mind.
Yeah, exactly. We're about to do this bad boy again. We've got an hour and 15 minutes to do it. We've got 15 games to get through, probably a little bit more weather information than we had earlier today, which is going to be relevant. So just to hit on it for right now, the long and short of all of it, going to be some water in Philly, maybe a little in Pittsburgh, Baltimore, New York, Detroit, Minnesota. It's a lot going on, but the Northeast in particular, that Philly, Pittsburgh, Baltimore, Mets thing, that's going to be one. We're going to need to keep our eye on it. I don't have much to add. Make sure you're watching live before lock immediately after this show. But yeah, for sure, hit that like button as we get started. You ready to do this again?
Yeah, kind of wishing I hadn't max entered after looking at the weather again, but too late to get out of that.
It's just a quick email. You know what you can do. But
yeah.
Then it clears up and you re-register. I've been down that road before.
Yeah, I've done that too.
I have sent the email to get me out of contest, then re-registered and gotten absolutely creamed by doing so. It's never worked out where it was like, oh, I'm glad I did that.
Yeah. Whenever I'm like, oh, maybe I won't play as much, and then I end up playing as much, it never goes well.
No, not at all. All right, well, let's start it off then. Phillies, Diamondbacks. 5.4 run implied total for the Phillies, 3.5 for the Diamondbacks. Aaron Nola, Taylor Widener. Nola at 32% ownership at this moment. Widener at 1. I am a little lighter than the field on Aaron Nola at this moment. Nothing too crazy. 32% feels like a lot. And I do think that the Phillies are a little bit over projected in the Vegas market. I am betting on Arizona, just putting that out there. Let's start with Nola, though. How do you feel about him at 10,200?
So we have kind of gotten an ownership move on him versus Cole from where we were at this morning. And that was one of the things that I thought was going to be really interesting to pay attention to throughout the day, because I think Nola and Cole are very similar pitchers on this slate. Cole's the more talented pitcher. He has the more difficult matchup. Nola, still a very good pitcher, especially at home, a 32% strikeout percentage this year, sub 3 xFIP, and he's been better at Citizens Bank for years. And he's got a better matchup against the Diamondbacks. We don't have a lineup for them yet, but their active roster has about a 25% strikeout percentage against right-handed pitching this year. They'll have a pitcher in the lineup. The Athletics won't against Cole. They no longer have Asdrubal Cabrera, who can be difficult to strike out. He's waived and I think went to the Cardinals or something. It doesn't matter, not the Diamondbacks. So it's a better matchup for Nola. But we have seen right now 32% ownership going to Nola, 22% going to Garrett Cole. So you have seen that move in favor of Nola. I kind of just think in tournaments, going to the lower owned one makes sense. Obviously within the context of your lineup, like if you need the $300 on DraftKings, by all means, just play Aaron Nola. Don't overthink it. On FanDuel, he's a lot less expensive than Cole, so it's kind of just a much better play in general. And if you have a really low owned stack, it doesn't really matter. Just go to whoever you prefer. I slightly prefer Nola. All this, of course, assuming the weather cooperates. But I think pretty clearly one of the top 2 pitchers on the slate. Just an interesting spot to pay attention to the ownership gap between him and Cole.
Any interest in a $7,300 Taylor Widener?
No, I still just don't really see a reason to get there on this slate. His strikeout numbers have been solid this year, up around 24%, actually exactly 24%, but 5.22 xFIP, 1.93 home runs per 9. Phillies lineup is not the best. No Hoskins, no McCutchen, but no Real Muto. So it's actually a pretty watered down Phillies lineup. But still, I think that there are pitchers in better spots that are less expensive or at least similarly priced as well.
Let's move on to the Phillies Bats. I have them as my number 3 stack and my number 6 overall for leverage. So I have a little bit of interest here in going to the Phillies. As I refresh our top stacks tool, we have the Phillies coming in 2, 4, 6, 9th overall, basically properly owned. I'm wondering where you stand, though. Are you more interested in the Phillies here against Widener and this run total, or are you leaning a little bit more towards the top stacks tool?
I'm leaning more toward the top stacks tool. I think it's just kind of middle of the pack for me. On the one hand, the Phillies do have a high implied run total, and there is some value here because of guys like Hoskins and Real Muto not being in the lineup. Suddenly you have Didi Gregorius batting fourth. Shortstop's not the best position, so getting him at 3,900 is pretty appealing. Brad Miller, 3,500 batting fifth. He is a first baseman on DraftKings, so the opportunity cost is a little bit higher, but we do know he has power and he's cheap. Adubel Herrera is leading off at 4K, and then you have the normal guys, Segura and Harper, who are priced up. So it's just a little bit cheaper stack than it normally is, and it is still, I think, a pretty high upside spot in this park against Widener. But I think that their chances of success decrease a little bit when you do remove McCutchen and Hoskins and Real Muto from the lineup.
Diamondbacks bats against the ownership of Nola. Now that it's up over 30%, does that become more viable?
It's still tough. I mean, I'd be a lot more interested if this were a smaller slate, but it still only gets you so far. I mean, one, it's still a really low probability spot, assuming that Nola is able to pitch and there's not a delay or anything like that. It's still a low probability spot, and you still have to have the Diamondbacks beat essentially every other offense on the slate. So it's still tough to get there. I think if you were going to go that route, maybe just looking to like a Dalton Varsho at catcher. He's someone that has some pop. Pavin Smith, if he's hitting second at 3,100, I think maybe a little bit more appealing than full stacking Arizona.
How much Bryson do you have?
Like 15%.
You see what he did today?
59.
60. 12 under. Yeah. Parred the final too. Two Eagles.
Yeah. I have more of him than every expensive golfer except for Rahm. And Rahm's coming into today at 8%. So hopefully he just passes Bryson anyway.
Yeah, 3 birdies so far. So this course playing pretty easy. But I just saw that Bryson shot a 60 and it was on my screen. So I wanted to bring it up just to see how much you had. Do you have anything else here for Phillies and Diamondbacks?
Nope.
All righty. Keeping it moving to your Orioles taking on the Rays. A 4-run implied total for the Orioles, 6 for the Rays. Matt Harvey, Shane McClanahan, no ownership going to either pitcher. I assume that's happening because Shane McClanahan is a crisp 10,700 and the most expensive pitcher on the slate. They've priced him out of being viable as far as I'm concerned, and Matt Harvey is Matt Harvey, so I just don't find him to be viable. Can we roster? I mean, we can roster Shane McClanahan. Do you want to?
I think it's pretty difficult the way the slate sets up right now. The one scenario I could see happening that would make it more appealing is if the weather clears up in Baltimore, because we do have weather concerns here as well. But if like Baltimore clears up and Philadelphia doesn't, and you end up losing Aaron Nola from the slate, that will just open up some opportunities to get to McClanahan in a decent spot. But assuming, if we're assuming no weather concerns, I think it just becomes tough because he doesn't go as deep in the games as guys like Cole and Nola. And while his strikeout stuff is really good and the matchup against the Orioles is okay, it's just really tough to pay more money for him than you're paying for Nola or Cole on DraftKings, more on FanDuel than Nola, because you're kind of at a situation where like, if McClanahan's only going to go 5-ish innings and throw, 80, 85 pitches, you're kind of hoping he gets like 20, 21 DraftKings points plus a win to get him 25 or 26, which is a good score. But at his salary, it's still like, that's not a great score for Nola or Cole. There's a decent chance one or both of those guys are going above that. So you're still just kind of like, okay, we got kind of the best game we could get from McClanahan, and you're still going to need like an average to slightly above average game from Cole and Nola. So I just think if both of those games go, it's pretty difficult to get to McClanahan.
Yeah, I haven't projected the same as Kevin Gossman. He's not getting any ownership at 9,900, and it's an $800 savings. I've got him projected similarly to Erod, another guy that I'm not even getting to at that point in time. So it becomes really difficult to want to get to McClanahan. And I don't even think it's like all that great of a spot. It's certainly a home run park. I don't think the Orioles offense is the problem and why they suck so bad. So it's not like I'm trying to say that the Orioles aren't at least an average to good matchup, but it's not like the dumpster fire that is causing the real problems for Baltimore. So I'm skipping McClanahan. I think we're both pretty clearly skipping Matt Harvey.
Yeah, I don't really see a reason on the slate.
Then how do we handle the Tampa Bay Rays? My number one stack for today, my biggest negative leverage stack. They are the number one stack in our top stack tool. Not the top of the negative leverage, but certainly a negative leverage stack. I think they look really good. I do think that they are on a different tier of their upside, given the park and the matchup against Harvey. Does the ownership concern you at all? Because right now it's Brandon Lau, at 17%, Nelson Cruz at 19, Manny Margot at 15, everybody else in single digits. There are spots here where you can get to Wander Franco, Austin Meadows, Yandy Diaz. I think those three guys might actually be under-owned. I think it's kind of easier to get to the Rays than it seems.
Yeah, I think so too, because, like you said, guys that are pulling a lot of ownership are Nelson Cruz, who now is first baseman on DraftKings. So that makes him a little bit more difficult to roster than when he was an outfielder. Brandon Lau, I think, clearly a top second base option. Manny Margot is really cheap at 2,900. Other than that, 9.5% ownership projected from Meadows and Kiermaier, 6% on Wander Franco, 6% on Yandy Diaz, 6% on Joey Wendell. You can still stack this team at relatively low ownership, especially if you just don't have one of Margot or Cruz or Lau.
Yeah.
And then even if you do want to use all three of those guys, there's going to be enough low-owned pitching, enough low-owned secondary stacks you can use on this slate to still not have a particularly popular team. So I think that it's still a good spot for Tampa. I still want to get to them. Matt Harvey is okay, certainly not good. And anyone coming in after him is just not going to be good.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like, I think Margot's pulling this ownership largely because of being 2,900. I think he's very clearly the easiest guy to leave off. If you want to go Lau, Cruz, Franco, Meadows, Diaz, I mean, you're getting a first baseman, a third baseman, a second baseman, a shortstop, and an outfielder. And three of those guys are 6% owned or 8% owned. Like, it's not as owned of a stack as it seems on the surface. And I think Margot is the easiest guy to get away from since he's hitting seventh and pulling the ownership. I like the Rays. I don't want to try to get away from them just because of the ownership. On a lot of days like this, it's pretty easy to say that. But even aggregate ownership on a 15 gamer, it's still not high enough. This is not a team that's pulling 25% of the aggregate like we'll see on like a 10 game slate in a really big run scenario. So team Rays, I guess, today.
Yep. Then, again, keep an eye on the weather too.
Yeah, absolutely. Are you in the WNBA queue?
The what? Oh, no, I don't think I was eligible.
Everybody's eligible.
Oh, okay. Then
you can get in a priority queue if you have
Aja Wilson.
I guess that's this person's name. I don't know.
Okay, yeah. So I'm in the queue now. Thanks. I should probably also get in the Naomi one.
Oh, is that now? Oh, yeah. Today's Friday. Yeah. Always your source of NFT news while we're doing legitimate breakdowns of slates, because these things all happen at the same time. And I think we're crossing paths here. Yeah. Perfect timing. Good shout on Naomi Osaka, because 2 minutes.
Yeah,
I'm sure I'm not going to get it. No. I mean, half of what have you seen the market for it?
No.
Okay. I don't even know if I'd get it back. That's my biggest question. So we'll see. Maybe I'll give you 1%.
All right.
Orioles bats against Shane McClanahan doesn't feel like the spot.
No, I don't think so. It's kind of the same thing I say a lot about the Orioles is that they do have some decent hitters, Mountcastle, Mancini, Hayes, Severino, Santander, Mullins. These guys are all reasonably priced. I don't really want to jam a bunch of them together. I think McClanahan's good. I think Tampa Bay's bullpen is good, but there are going to be some spots where, you just want a low owned guy that has some power. I think that's where the Orioles are useful.
Yeah, it's more. I'd be picking off individuals here, but we can't even get McClanahan to get any ownership.
Yeah, Santander in particular just appears to be healthy now. He's hitting really, really well. This is someone that we saw be a really, really big bright spot for the Orioles the last couple of seasons, and then he started out slowly this year and dealt with some injuries. He's really turning it around. So 2,800, despite a difficult matchup, I think it's just too cheap of a price tag on him.
Anything else, Orioles or Rays?
Nope. Somebody asked, what about DJ Stewart? I'd be very surprised if he's in the lineup.
Also, there's better spots. It's like there's just when push comes to shove, there's just better spots. Pirates and Cards, 4-run implied total for the Pirates, 4.9 for the Cards. Dylan Peters and J.A. Happ. Happ at 7% ownership. We haven't really seen anything change there. Yeah, I said it. 1% going to Dylan Peters. This is pretty uneventful. I think Happ is properly owned, and I don't really have anything to add. Has anything changed for you since the strategy show?
No, pretty much the same thing. He is someone that I could see picking up some more ownership as time goes on, if, for example, we lose the Philadelphia game and you have 30% Aaron Nola to redistribute, Hap at 8K. It's just a good matchup against the Pirates, but I think he's appropriately priced. I think he's getting about the ownership that he should. Right now, we have him with a 7.5% chance of being a top 2 pitcher, 6.5% projected ownership. For the season, he has an 18% strikeout percentage, 1.86 home runs per 9, 5.17 xFIP. The guy is not good, but the Pirates also one of the weaker offenses in the league, though maybe a little bit better going forward now that they've added Michael Travis, now that Yoshi Tsutsugo homers every single game. Maybe they get a little bit better.
195 on Naomi Osaka.
26.45.
Out of 100. No, so close.
Yeah. No Brian Reynolds today for the Pirates does make the lineup look a little bit worse as well. Actually, a lot worse.
Yeah. I don't have bats in this game. This one's still pretty much showing up the way that I thought it would earlier today. I've got the Cardinals 12th overall. I think they're basically properly owned. I got the Pirates 20th. I think they're properly owned. There's no ownership going to the pitchers to make this an interesting leverage spot. It's not the best park in the world, particularly for righty power. I know you were a little bit more interested in the Cardinals this morning than I was. Are you still holding there?
Yeah, I still don't really think Dylan Peters is very good. Going back to the start of the 2019 season, he's given up power to right-handed hitters. He doesn't strike a lot of guys out. 246 expected ISO, 17.7% strikeout percentage. You have Tyler O'Neill in the lineup hitting third at 4,200. He looks good. You can pay up to be contrarian on guys like Goldschmidt and Arenado that are very expensive on DraftKings. Yadi Molina, Dylan Carlson, reasonably priced. And then even the bottom of the order, if you wanted to mix in another lower owned guy, Harrison Bader batting 8th. He does have power and speed. He's facing a pitcher that doesn't miss a lot of bats. I don't really have any issues going there. But the highest owned guy on this team right now is projected to be Tyler O'Neill at 7%. I think it's a good matchup. They have a respectable 4.8 implied run total. Not saying I'm going crazy with the Cardinals. Like, there's a lot of teams I'm going to like more, but I do think they're projected to be a little bit under owned, and I do think they're in a good spot.
Yeah, I don't mind grabbing individual bats here. I think Arenado's in a good spot. I think Goldschmidt's in a good spot. Not pulling any ownership at all. Tommy Edmond, actually the guy that shows up the most here, 4,300, hitting in the leadoff spot. I just don't see them as like a particularly necessary 5-man today. Don't mind getting there if it happens. I just don't expect it. I don't really have anything else here. Yeah, I assume we're not going to Pirates bats.
No, I think Ke'Bryan Hayes is worth a mention at 4,100. Third base isn't the best position today. And the guys that you are going to like, typically you're paying up for. Nolan Arenado at 5,800. Jose Ramirez at 5,700. If you need a little bit of savings, I think Ke'Bryan Hayes looks pretty good. Michael Travis, kind of the same thing at second base. But overall, not a team that I'm planning on stacking. You
know how many packs there are for WNBA?
No, but I'm number 14,862.
Well, I'm a little bit further than that. I'm in 58,000. So I'm going to go out on a limb and say that I don't get one of these.
Yeah, I don't know how many there
are. All righty. Cleveland and Boston. 4.3 run implied total for the Indians, 5.7 for the Red Sox. Logan Allen and Eduardo Rodriguez. Eduardo Rodriguez, obviously a much better pitcher than J.A. Happ, but in a very similar scenario, just slightly under 10% ownership, actually 5% right now. That's about where I have him. He's 9,400. It's a good spot against Cleveland. There's some strikeouts. There's not a lot of talent in the lineup. Jose Ramirez and Franmil Reyes be damned. Are you going to get to more Erod at 5% today?
I think it's a pretty interesting spot. The ownership's pretty low. It's come down since this morning, down to about 5%. The Indians' implied run total has dropped to 4. The lineup, I don't think is ideal. It's about as rough a lineup, I think, as you could get for Rodriguez. Wilson Ramos doesn't strike out a lot. He's hitting 5th. Franmil Reyes is good. Ramirez is good. Straw and Rosario are kind of whatever, but, it's, I think, a middle of the road matchup. The reason I'm interested in Rodriguez, though, is you're getting a bunch of ownership going to Joe Musgrove at about the same price. You're getting the ownership deservedly going to Nola and Cole, but you're even getting more ownership to someone like Sean Manaea against the Yankees. I don't really think this is any more difficult of a matchup than Manaea has. Rodriguez has been really unlucky across the board this season. 5.19 ERA compared to a 3.41 xFIP. He has the 4th highest strikeout percentage on the slate at 28.5%. He's getting 5% ownership. And then even more so if you do lose Nola, that's a spot where I think some ownership should probably move to. So it's a relatively risky spot. It's not like it would be shocking if Rodriguez struggles, but I do think Rodriguez is going a bit under-owned here.
I have him at 7%. I don't really have much to add. I end up having Musgrove ahead of him, which doesn't really feel great. It feels like I should just Like, it feels like a spot where I should manually be making some sort of override and like inverting those two guys, but he's just not popping enough for me. Logan Allen, go ahead.
No, I was like, I think that's fine. It's one of those where I don't think you really should get bogged down too much on individual pitching because it's only taking up one spot in your lineup. Like, just because, Musgrove's projected for more ownership than Rodriguez, if you have Musgrove projecting higher, which I think is typical, I think he does project higher, then if you're going to lower on stacks, you should just be going to Musgrove a lot of the time.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, they're not separated by all that much. I could bring those guys super close together. Just doesn't appear to be an Erod day. And I think a lot of that is just still driven by the fact that I have Andre Jackson as a viable pitcher at 35% ownership, and I don't even know if he's going to play today. So there's also that. No Logan Allen for me at 4,700, particularly if Andre Jackson is a part of this slate. But even still, I'm not looking to get anybody against the Red Sox.
Yeah, same here. No real reason to go to Logan Allen.
I've got Boston as my number 2 stack, but they are my third biggest, actually 26th overall in leverage. So 30, 29, 20, 27. Fifth biggest negative leverage team. Although they're not really pulling all that much ownership. It just so happens that they're pulling a little bit more than most teams. Kike, Schwarber, JD, Christian Vasquez, all in double digits. But it's not a particularly highly owned stack. They get a really solid matchup against Logan Allen. I like Boston a lot here. They are my number 2. They're the number 2 in top stacks. Not a team that I'm trying to get away from.
Yeah, same here. Ownership looks like it's coming in around where it should, but I think it's a really, really good matchup. Logan Allen has not been great over the course of his career. Going back to the start of the 2019 season for him, 14% strikeout percentage to righties, 12.9 to lefties, so nothing that stands out there. 230 expected ISO to righties, 272 to lefties. We don't have a Boston lineup yet, unless it just came out. It doesn't look like it has, but assuming it's the normal lineup, I think that pretty much everyone in it is going to be a good option for one reason or another, because guys like Bogarts and Kike and JD Martinez are going to be really good plays just on their own merits. Same for guys like Schwarber and Devers. But then it's kind of like the more you move down the lineup, you get to guys potentially like Jarren Duran or Bobby Dahlbeck. Those guys aren't as strong as the hitters at the top of the order, but they're also naturally going to get less ownership, and they're still going to, if the Red Sox do what we think they're going to do, they're still going to get plenty of at-bats, and they're still good enough hitters that they're going to be pretty interesting plays.
So how does the top of the top stacks tool work differently for you on a day like today with 15 games where we've got Tampa and Boston pretty clearly separating from the pack? They're either properly owned or slightly over-owned. But with 30 teams on the slate, does that negative leverage matter to you as much on a day like today?
Not really, because raw ownership itself isn't going to matter as much. And also looking at just kind of the way this slate is, there's not really many teams outside of right now Houston, but again, that could change. There's not really many teams that are projected to be drastically underowned. So typically when that happens, and it's not really unusual for slates of this size, it's going to push me more towards teams that are like correctly owned, but also really likely to be successful. Whereas on smaller slates, a lot of time the teams at the top are just getting a lot more ownership. So I end up getting away from them.
One other follow-up question to that, since we have a little bit of time. Let's say Andre Jackson is a part of this slate today. How does that impact the way that you end up rostering hitters? Does that really just sort of free you up for anything at all?
Yeah, it makes salary not matter, because anywhere that I need salary, I can just go to a 4K Andre Jackson.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't think there was going to be too much to hit on there, but since I think we're going to be advocating for him, barring him not actually playing, that makes every stack totally viable from a financial standpoint. It's not going to be difficult to get to those, to get to him at all. Any Cleveland bats for you against Erod?
I think the middle of the order. Like I said, I think Rodriguez is a very, very good pitcher, but Jose Ramirez, Franmil Reyes, and a $2,700 Wilson Ramos, these guys all can do a lot of damage. I don't really know why Oscar Mercado is batting ninth tonight, unless it's that Cleveland buys into reverse splits here, because Rodriguez has given up a lot more production to lefties. I don't know if maybe that's why they wanted Zimmer batting sixth, but Ramirez Reyes Ramos, looking back at these guys over the last few seasons, against left-handed pitching for Ramirez, he's got a 387 expected WOBA, 267 expected ISO. Reyes a 212 expected ISO. Ramos 179, not bad for a $2,700 catcher. So I think the middle of the order looks pretty good. If you want to tack on, Straw, Rosario, Zimmer, something like that, it's not the end of the world. But ideally, I'm just looking at those three guys.
Okay. I don't have anything else here to touch on. So at this point in time, we could talk a little bit about the schedule for the rest of the day. God, I really thought that I was hoping just a bunch of people died off and I can get that Naomi Osaka, but neither here nor there. Schedule for the rest of the day. Coming up after this from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m., MLB Live Before Lock. Greg and Gundacker taking you all the way up to not lock, but taking you to 6 p.m., where we will turn this one over to the NFL Live Before Lock crew, which will be Eric and Matt Gajeski. We got NFL games now, people. We got to prioritize. Things are changing. Plus free content, MLB top pitchers, MMA pro plays, a lot of good stuff going on. Check out Nightbot if you need those links, or just go straight to awesemo.com for those links. Mets and Nats, 5.1 run implied total for the Mets, 3.7 for the Nats. Rich Hill, Paulo Espino, 9% ownership to Hill. How you feel about it?
Seems about right. Like, I think that the Mets plan with him is basically like, let's get you 5 innings. Let's not have you go any further than that, really, and then get you out of the game. He hasn't been very good this year. He's not going that deep into games. 71 pitches, 68, 74 in his last 3 starts, but also not a bad matchup against the Nats. He is only 6,800. I don't really want to get to him a lot, but I do think that his price range is likely to be helpful on this slate. And you kind of have a bunch of similar guys there with him, Bubic, Keuchel, Odorizzi, just all guys that are in pretty good matchups that aren't very good. So especially if we don't get news on Andre Jackson, or if we get news that Andre Jackson is not pitching tonight, that price range becomes more useful. So my approach is probably going to be to just kind of spread my exposures out across them.
What is happening with my lineup right now? God, for some reason...
With your lineup?
Yeah, sorry, my lineups page. For some reason, somebody's pulling incorrectly, and I feel like I'm you. Like, I've got guys in the wrong order. Everybody's like,
well, pro tip, don't upload them to Fantasy Crunch for that way, because it's not a fun night.
Maybe I just didn't paste over the Pirates lineup correctly. I don't know what's happening here. Do you have any interest in Paulo Espino, who I believe you said was the worst pitcher today?
Yeah, I said I think he's one of the worst starting pitchers in baseball right now. But no, I don't. Not a Mets team that I really love picking on. Like, they're not great, but they're not. It's not the Rangers or something like that, which is kind of what you would need if I wanted to go to Paulo Espino. 17.6% strikeout percentage against lefties for the last 3 years in the majors. 19.5% strikeout percentage against righties this season. He's allowed a 288 expected ISO to righties this year, 181 to lefties. Just not a particularly good pitcher. I think the Mets are a good enough lineup. They should be able to take advantage here. This is, I think, another spot where there's a chance for rain. I think someone said that the tarp was on the field. That was in YouTube chat. I don't remember who it was, but definitely just another spot to pay attention to.
Okay. Well, let's talk a little bit about this Mets team. You said you wanted to talk about targeting them. I have them 4th overall and 4th in leverage. They are a bit lower in terms of top stack odds, but this feels like a really nice spot. North of 5 run implied total. Not a great park for runs, but it's fine for home runs. Espino has a 5 projected FIP via steamer. This is a really nice Mets lineup. They're pulling no ownership. I'd like to get to New York.
Yeah, they're a nice combination of savings and also guys that just have power. Peter Alonso in particular, we know he's got tons and tons of power. 255 expected ISO against righties over the last 3 seasons. Sets up really, really well here. One of my favorite first base plays. Brandon Nimmo, assuming he's leading off at 4K, is going to look good. Conforto at 3,400 is underpriced. Javi Baez against a guy that doesn't strike out hitters is going to look a little bit better, because he really has issues with what pitches he should and should not be swinging at. Espino doesn't typically miss bats, though. Cheap Dominic Smith. You have Lindor in there. McNeil. Like, it's actually a pretty deep lineup now that this team's gotten pretty healthy. And there's a lot of guys that I just think are better hitters than Espino is a pitcher.
Yeah, I'm really surprised to see this ownership at the top of the lineup. Like, why is Brandon Nimmo 2% owned? I guess I know why Lindor is 2% owned. Like, why is Pete Alonso 4.5% owned in this spot? It just doesn't make a ton of sense to me. I want more Mets. I'm surprised we're as low on them, given their like run total, given this matchup. Like, this feels like a really nice spot.
Yeah, I agree.
All righty. Any Nats bats here against Rich Hill, against Dick Mountain?
No Ryan Zimmerman in the lineup is disappointing. Josh Bell's fine, of course. So is Juan Soto. You have Victor Robles back at the top of the order. kind of, I think you said it about Miles Straw either this morning or on this show. I don't know. I was only half listening, but I know you said it. 2K flat leading off is fine. So it's kind of just, like, are you good?
I'm good. Well, I wasn't ready for you to be like, I just wasn't listening to
you. It's still just like too cheap of a price tag for a guy leading off, even though Victor Robles has his flaws. So does Rich Hill. So those guys are okay, but not a team that I'm planning to get much of.
Yeah, I don't really blame you. I don't have any good Nats takes, so I'm going to go ahead and skip. What they want to know what's happening to me. I didn't expect to be told that I was not listened to for like random stuff. Just like, oh man, I might actually I'm going to get a WNBA pack.
Yeah, so there's 60,000 packs left.
Yeah, I think I'm winning this one by default. All right, I'll take it. All right, we'll keep it moving. Tigers and Blue Jays. 4.3 run implied total for the Tigers, 5.3 for the Jays. Matt Manning and Steven Matz. Matt's at 12% ownership. Feeling a little high for me right now. Are you interested in Matz? Do you care about that 12% ownership number? It's a clearly good spot against the Tigers.
I think it's about where it should be. He has an 11.5% chance of being a top 2 pitcher, 11.5% give or take projected ownership here. The Tigers lineup isn't the best for him, I don't think. It's entirely right-handed. Against right-handed hitters this year, Matz has struck out 20%, 153 expected ISO, 325 expected WOBA. Guys like Eric Haas, who's back in the lineup, hitting 5th. He looks pretty good. Jonathan Scope has power. Robbie Grossman is actually a pretty good all-around baseball player. He's only 3,600 leading off. So it's not the best lineup, and Matz himself isn't the best pitcher. I think it's just kind of a situation where, like, if Matz were getting more ownership, I would be pretty comfortable saying he's over-owned. If you were getting less, I'd be pretty comfortable saying, okay, I'll take my chances on a pitcher against the Tigers. So I just kind of think he's where he should be.
Okay. Matt Manning, 5,800 against the Blue Jays. Ooh, great spot.
Yeah, great spot for a great pitcher. Manning has just not had it at the major league level this year. One of the lowest strikeout percentages on the slate at 12%, 1.18 home runs per 9, 5.35 xFIP. There's been plenty of times I've been willing to take a chance on Manning this year in spots like the Orioles or the Rangers. The Blue Jays not quite that spot.
Well, that worked out pretty well. Right as you started talking, my AirPods just shut off, but I was able to flip to my speakers fast enough that it wasn't ultimately anything at all. So that worked out well. Blue Jays bats, 9th for me overall, 29th in leverage. Different lineup than I guess I was expecting. A lot of ownership going to Bo Bichette, not as much going to the rest of the lineup. Has anything changed for you for the Blue Jays? Are you more interested in them still, given the fact that it's Bo Bichette pulling the ownership, but it's not really going anywhere else?
Yeah, I think that this is just another example of not only paying attention to aggregate ownership on a team, but also the individual hitters, because I think Bo Bichette is clearly one of the top shortstop plays. He's 4,700 on DraftKings against Matt Manning. That's too cheap of a price tag. And then it's a position that isn't really that strong. So he deserves to pull ownership. Then you're getting, Marcus Semien getting a decent amount. I kind of can say the same thing about second base that you can about shortstop. Teoscar Hernandez is going to look good. But then, Vlad Guerrero projected for 8%, Dickerson at 8%, Grichuk at 5%, Gurriel at 4%. I think that overall you can get a relatively low-owned Toronto stack, kind of like you can with Boston, kind of like you can with Tampa Bay, if you're just paying attention to the hitters that you choose. And then you can roster the more popular guys where you are paying them with lower-owned pitchers, like if you're using Eduardo Rodriguez, or lower-owned secondary stacks, whatever you want to do. I think Toronto is still going to be a good team to get to here.
I'm a little surprised how low they're ranking just in my aggregate. I'm about to finish my updated crunch with some of our new lineups, so I'm wondering if it changes at all, but I have them oddly low. I'm starting to think it's going to jump up when I paste this in. We're about to find out. It takes a little bit on a 15-game slate to get all of this data together. 30 teams is a lot. All right. So, so I have the Blue Jays 4th overall. Should be pretty easy to get to them. Price tags look good. So a little over-owned, sure, but nothing that I'm really freaking out about, particularly against Matt Manning. It's a nice spot. Tigers bats against Steven Matz.
I think it's okay. Individually, I like Grossman, Scope, and Haas. We did just get news that Kike Hernandez tested positive for COVID, so he won't be playing tonight. And then who knows who else isn't going to end up playing tonight.
Fair enough. All right. Well, let's keep this one moving then. Marlins and Reds. Zach Thompson, Wade Miley, 4.3 run implied total for the Reds, 3.7 for the Marlins. A little bit of ownership coming into Wade Miley, 9%. He's 9,200. He is not a guy that I'm looking to get to. So break the tie. Should we be owning Wade Miley or not?
It's pretty difficult for me, I think, to prioritize him here. It is a good matchup against Miami. No real doubt about that. 8.5% ownership, I think, is fine. I kind of just feel similarly on him as I do Steven Matz. If I get to, and Rich Hill, if I get to a little bit of those guys, it's okay. But I think Miley's clearly priced up for the matchup against Miami. You can't really look at this, a pitcher with an 18% strikeout percentage this season and say, oh, there's a lot of meat left on the bone at $9,200. I don't really care what you think about Miami. It's a good park. Miley is pretty good at limiting production, but I don't think that there's a huge ceiling for him here unless you just happen to get one of those, eight inning, 6 strikeout games that, I guess he could get, but pretty unlikely. So not somebody I'm going on my way to target. It is a good matchup though, but I would rather get a 4% owned Rodriguez or 5% owned Rodriguez, I think, than an 8% owned Miley.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Zach Thompson, 7,500 doesn't seem like that kind of day today.
Yeah, same here. I just think that there's enough pitchers. There's enough questionable pitchers in good spots. I don't really need to go to a questionable pitcher against the Reds. Questionable in the sense of talent level, not if he's going to pitch or not.
Yeah. Is there any bat that you want in this game at all? Whether that's Zach Thompson whether that's against Zach Thompson, against Wade Miley. To me, this is like a full stay away game. It's a cross off.
It mostly is for me. Jorge Alfaro is batting cleanup at 3K. He does have an ISO north of 200 against left-handed pitching over the last few years. On the other side, Tyler Naquin is hitting second at 2,700. He just shouldn't be 2,700. I don't really know why he is. He has hit well this year. It's not a good park for hitting, but 202 expected ISO, 344 expected WOBA against right-handed pitching for Tyler Naquin this year. Not really a $2,700 player.
Anything else for Marlins or Reds?
Nope.
All righty. Well, then let's at least talk a little bit about some promo codes. We'll start with Blitz. It's only 15% off now for our Awesemo Plus NFL Platinum package. But you're still getting a pretty good discount on an annual package that we don't normally give discounts to. You're getting our player projections, ownership, top stacks, premium slack, and a ton of new options on the NFL side that's going to be behind the player or behind the paywall. Plus, you get preseason projections and updated depth charts all preseason long. So use that promo code on an Awesemo Plus NFL package. And if you're playing any best ball or any season long, use the promo code WR. It's the same projections and tools and analysis that we have for NFL DFS, but we're transitioning that to season long and best ball. We got the Draft Wingman. I've done 2 videos using the tool. It's fantastic for drafts, best ball rankings and a stacking guide, trade value chart, and more. You can get up to a $35 credit for underdog and FFPC leagues. You're getting 33% off this package. It's going to be less than $10 for everything we have to offer for season long on best ball. Don't sleep on it, guys. Save yourself some money. Use these promo codes. And then we'll talk a little bit about the Atlanta Braves and the San Francisco Giants. 4.4 run implied total for Atlanta, 4.1 for the Giants. Max Fried, Kevin Gossman, Fried at 11%. Gossman just 3. I'm not particularly fond of using either one of these guys today. Not that they're not good pitchers, because they are, but both offenses are good. And it just feels easier to use other guys. Are you getting to Fried or Gossman today?
That's mostly how I feel. Fried, I think, he is projected for more ownership. He's less expensive. That makes sense. He's not as good a strikeout pitcher. He is a good real life pitcher though, but the spot against the Giants is tough. We don't have the lineup yet. There's a good chance it won't have Buster Posey. It won't have Brandon Belt. So it'll be a little bit watered down, but they still have so many good hitters that it's not a great spot. And then also Fried's strikeout numbers, as you would expect, take a pretty big hit against righties compared to lefties. I think where I'm more interested is Gossman, just from a pure ceiling standpoint. We've seen him kind of be all over the place this year. He was excellent at the start of the season. If you look over his last 10 starts, his strikeout percentage has taken a really big hit. His walk rate is up over 11%. His xFIP's up over 4. But then even if you narrow it down to his last 5 starts, he gets back to an xFIP around 3 and a 30% strikeout percentage. Overall, he's just been really good this year. He has the second highest strikeout percentage on the slate at 29.5%, 3.41 xFIP. There are some strikeouts in the Braves lineup. You have Soler, Riley, Swanson in particular, Duvall, but It's not the best matchup. It's a dangerous offense. It's just a spot, though, where I look at it, and if you do have money to pay up and you need a low-owned pitcher, I don't think Gausman, I don't think Garrett Cole's a 7-1 favorite against Gausman. I don't think Nola is 10-1. But as I've said before, even, like 10 minutes ago, pitching only takes up one spot in your lineup. So typically I just end up getting to the pitchers that project better.
Okay. Can we get to bats in this game? Is that something we want to do? I have the Giants middle of the pack. I have the Braves not middle of the pack, but not at the top either. Like to me, I would rather this is sort of like another cross-off game. Although, like, if I ended up with Fried or ended up with Gausman, I'd be okay. I don't want the offenses.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at too. Neither pitcher is getting a ton of ownership. I think both pitchers are good. I just don't. There's enough teams I like on the slate. I don't really see myself targeting much Max Fried or Kevin Gausman.
I don't have anything else for Atlanta or San Francisco other than just to say go Braves.
Someone super chatted you to talk about soccer, so feel free.
I'm about to hit on it now. I don't have much to add here. Carlos Manzo with the super chat. We all know no one cares about baseball. So who is scoring between Liverpool and Chelsea? That game is tomorrow at 12:30. I hope everyone is watching. It is a massive, massive contest. Here's the deal. I don't know who's scoring as long as it's not Chelsea. Anyone from Liverpool works for me. As long as Chelsea doesn't score at all, that would be great. I'm a big Lukaku fan, but we got Big Verge back. You put him on lockdown. What'd you think of that analysis, Adam? What do you think? Who scores for Liverpool and Chelsea tomorrow?
I'm not even joking. I just completely my ears turned off as soon as you started. I was just reading chat and did not hear a word you said.
I mean, I know you're not joking because even when the things that I'm saying are relevant to you, you're not all that interested in listening. So I can't even imagine what it's like when I'm talking about something you definitely don't give a shit about. Yeah,
normally then though, at least I'm able to pick up on keywords so that when it is my turn to talk, I can sound like I was listening.
Yeah, when you went into soccer, it's just Odorizzi.
Yeah, exactly. When it went into soccer, they just completely closed.
Fair enough. Alrighty, 3.8 run implied total for the Rangers, 5.2 for the Astros. Glenn Otto, Jake Odorizzi, Otto 5,300. Don't roster him. Jake Odorizzi 6,700, 15% owned. I can't say don't roster him, but I just kind of wish that he was like 7,300 and not interesting.
Yeah, I kind of just feel for one, my final exposure to Odorizzi will depend on what kind of news we get on Andre Jackson and then also with, weather elsewhere. It's a good matchup. Odorizzi just, hasn't been good this year. 21% strikeout percentage, 4.84 xFIP, 1.78 home runs per 9. It's a good matchup against Texas. This is a bad offense, no doubt about it. But he is also getting ownership here. I don't think there should be much of a difference in ownership between Odorizzi, Bubic, Keuchel, Hill. Right now, you're getting Odorizzi with twice the ownership of Hill, 3 times the ownership of Bubic, 7 times the ownership of Keuchel. I just think that whole group should be a lot closer together.
How much Glenn Otto do you want tonight?
None.
No, not a single share.
I'm good on that one.
Okay, that's fair. The Astros are my number 8 overall stack and my number 1 leverage stack. They are 4th overall and our biggest leverage stack. So the question to you is this: why is no one rostering Houston?
I have no idea. I keep waiting for that to change, and it hasn't. But they should.
What do you think their ownership actually comes in at?
7-8%.
Yeah. They look great here. 5.2 run implied total. Whatever Glenn Otto is not something we should be worried about. I know Texas isn't the same sort of park that it used to be. That's not changing anything for me. This is the Astros. There is legitimate high-end talent throughout this lineup, and the most owned guy is Kyle Tucker at 7%. The second most owned guy is Michael Brantley at 2%. Just play the Astros top to bottom. I don't see a problem anywhere in this lineup. This should be probably if this is their ownership, this should be your most owned stack.
Yeah, agreed completely. And even if the thing is right now, even if you adjust Houston and say okay, I think maybe they come in at 6%. they still are a good stack here. I mean, this is a good spot. Glenn Otto doesn't project to be a very good major league pitcher, and Houston is not only just a good lineup always, but now we don't have their actual lineup. But most likely, you're going to have Bregman, you're going to have Kyle Tucker, in addition to the guys that we've been playing for the last 2 months. Altuve, Brantley, Correa, Gurriel, just a really, really good lineup. Not projected to get much ownership, even if they do get a little bit more than we're expecting. I think that they're still one of the better offenses.
Yeah, like, even if I considered them properly owned, I still like getting to the Houston Astros at that ownership on a monster slate. They're just as they're one of the more likely teams on today's slate to provide a ceiling. Like it just looks great. Under owned, properly owned. Like, let's just say that their ownership matches their top stack odds. They're still the fourth best top stack for the day. This is craziness to me. Just roster the Astros, all of them. Even the bottom of the lineup isn't even hard to get to. Kyle Tucker's 3,600. Jake Myers, who is fine, is 2,400. Maybe you don't want to roster $2,300 Maldonado, but it even makes the stack cheaper to get to. Not that you needed it, because these guys aren't even expensive in the first place. I don't understand. All Astros. You having fun in chat?
I'm having fun in Twitter DMs right now.
Oh, okay. Even better. Rangers bats against Odorizzi. 15% ownership. It's starting to get to a point where I might consider it.
Yeah, I think it's still hard for me to full stack them. They are really cheap. So, I mean, I guess there would be a team you could use if you are going Cole, Nola, and, the weather works out. You're getting some leverage against Odorizzi. But it's more so individually. I like Adolis Garcia. I like Nate Lowe. I think they both are actually, good enough hitters. Nate Lowe's been above average for his major league career. Garcia's having a hell of a year this year, and he's still cheap. And Odorizzi does give up power. So, it's another team where I'm more interested in just kind of picking off a couple of good hitters than I am 5-man stacking them.
I don't have anything else here. Who's your favorite Astros bat?
What? Did you start laughing at something?
I asked you who your favorite Astros bat was.
No, I heard that, but it sounded like you started laughing at the end. So I thought you were about to say something else, to follow that up. But yeah, it's Kyle Tucker at 3,600. Brantley at 4K is also underpriced. But Tucker's salary is the one that stands out the most.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I'd probably lean Brantley over Tucker, if I'm being perfectly honest. I think Yordan Alvarez, even at 5,600. I wish he had I don't know. I guess I don't wish anything. Yeah, he just shouldn't be 2% owned in a lefty-righty matchup against whatever Glenn Otto is. Twins and Brewers. This is a wild game for me because I think the Twins should be favored, and they are not even close to favored. 4.5 run implied total for Minnesota, 5 runs for the Brewers. Andrew Albers and Eric Lauer going today. No ownership to Albers, no ownership to Lauer. Are you interested in the 35-year-old Andrew Albers?
I am not. I'm glad you pointed out this morning how old he was. Not that changed my interest level, but I would have guessed he was 29.
Yeah. And are you interested in 9K Eric Lauer against the Twins?
Also a pretty tough sell for me. I don't think he's a terrible pitcher. I just don't think he's a $9,000 pitcher either. He's kind of Wade Miley-esque, except instead of facing the Marlins, he's facing the Twins.
Well, then let's talk about the bats here. I've got the Twins 10th. I've got the Brewers 13th. I've made no questions that I find this Brewers team to be wildly overrated in this spot. Or maybe I'm giving Andrew Albers a little bit too much credit. Do you like either side of this game? Because this Brewers team is my biggest negative leverage stack of the day. I'm not interested.
I like the Brewers. I just don't really like the ownership that they're projected to get. I think it's a perfectly fine spot against Albers. They have a 5.1 implied run total. You have a really cheap price tag on Avisail Garcia at 3,900 relative to what he's capable of doing. Willie Adames' salary has come down. If he's in the lineup, Lorenzo Cain is only 2,700. There's some value here, so I understand why people are going there. But compared to some of the other teams, I just think they're getting more ownership than they really should, and that's going to make me move, more to teams like Houston and Toronto and Tampa.
Twins bats, 10th overall. Matchup against Eric Lauer is fine to me, I guess. There's a lot of righty power here.
Yeah, I think it's another situation where it's an okay spot for Minnesota, but the pricing just kind of is going to drive people there. They're not getting nearly as much ownership as Milwaukee is. I don't think it's as good a spot either. But I do like the $3,700 salary on Donaldson. He's just still a good hitter, having another good year. His numbers against left-handed pitching this year, he has 122 plate appearances with a 226 expected ISO. Lauer so far, 172 expected ISO, 2 righties this season. Same can be said for Mitch Garver at 4,200, even Sano at 3,700. It's another team where they're not going to make it to the top of my list as far as full stacks go, but I do like the idea of using some of them as one-offs.
Dwayne, no, this is not the Hammer and the Barber on my shirt. It's Bobby the Brain Heenan and Gorilla Monsoon. Neither here nor there.
I noticed you smoke weed.
I mean, I didn't even think it was a question at this point. I've done it on shows. So yes, I do indeed. Who's your favorite bat in this game? I find it to be oddly balanced on both sides.
Yeah, I think probably Avisail Garcia, Josh Donaldson from the Minnesota side.
Yeah. Donaldson, certainly the guy that's pulling the most ownership, 3,700. I mean, if we're talking about just power, Brent Rooker against Lauer hitting second at 2,700, that's a pretty nice value for an outfielder with pretty like big time pop. That's all I got though for Twins and Brew Crew.
Yeah, that's nothing else for me.
We're off to Chicago. Let's start here. Is deep dish pizza pizza?
No.
Oh, okay. That works for me. Is deep dish pizza good?
No.
Ooh, okay. Let's talk about that one since we still have a little bit of time. Why not?
Because it's not from New York.
Expecting this to go. So what's your real take? That felt like a take that was just a shot at Chicago and not like your actual stance on pizza.
New York pizza is the only good pizza.
Okay, but is a Chicago casserole still delicious?
I don't know.
Okay, I'm curious there because to me, not pizza. I agree. Still delicious.
Somebody said, what kind of pizza do I have in my state? The answer is New York because I'm like 2 states away from New York.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I never really realized there was different kinds of pizza other than the pizza that I had growing up in Eastern Pennsylvania. Like it's just every pizza shop is a New York pizza shop. That's the only thing I've ever known.
Yeah.
A nice Chicago casserole. I'm mostly
joking. I don't think I've only been to Chicago once, and I don't think I had deep dish there. So any Chicago deep dish I've had has been fake Chicago deep dish.
I'm in for sauce. I'm in for dough. Please don't pick this audio out, but I'm in for meat. And I'm certainly in for cheese. All those things go great together. Just because I have to eat it with a knife and fork, I'm okay with that. It's not pizza. Still delicious. Neither here nor there. White Sox and Cubs. 5.6 run implied total for the White Sox. 3.9 for the Cubs. Dallas Keuchel, Keegan Thompson. Nothing has changed for Keuchel. 2% owned at 6,600. I'm still interested in going to Keuchel here. This Cubs lineup is garbage. This entire Cubs team is not very good. It's not like Dallas Keuchel is going to be mowing people down, but it's a monster strikeout rate again for the Cubs. It's going to help Keuchel at least a little bit. He's got the opportunity to go pretty deep into this game. I don't know why Keuchel's not getting any ownership today.
Neither do I. I don't think Dallas Keuchel is a good pitcher anymore, but given where some of the ownership's projected to go, that can't be the only reason. Jake Odorizzi is not a good pitcher anymore either. And he's getting, 7 times the ownership that Keuchel is right now. The Cubs far and away have the highest strikeout percentage in baseball since the trade deadline when they traded anyone remotely good on their team away. Basically, you have Frank Schwindel, who's been hitting well. Patrick Wisdom has shown the ability to hit. Other than that, there's just not a lot here. And like you said, you're not expecting Keuchel to go pick up a ton of strikeouts, but you're still expecting him to get more against the Cubs than he would against an average team. And there is a pretty good chance that he's just going to be able to work deep enough into this game that he pays off $6,600 salary. So certainly not going to be excited about Keuchel, but as I said before, I just think you should get the ownership a lot more spread out amongst that group of guys at this price tier. I don't think Odorizzi is head and shoulders better than them, like his ownership reflects right now.
Not only that, but I don't think there's anybody to go to below Dallas Keuchel unless it's Andre Jackson, which I want to do if that is the case at 4K. If Andre Jackson's not on this slate, I like Keuchel even more.
Right. Yeah. I think I lose a lot of these guys in general. Odorizzi, Keuchel, Bubic. There was another one, Rich Hill. I'd probably just kind of lose all of those guys because I can get similar results for 4K if Andre Jackson's going to pitch. But if for the sake of this conversation, we assume that either Jackson's not going to pitch or we don't know, then I think this range becomes more useful. But there shouldn't, to me, be a big gap in these guys all project to be 1 to 2 points different in terms of median projections. From a tournament standpoint, that's basically the same thing.
Yep. We are on the exact same page here. Well, let's talk at least a little bit about offense, because I'm not sure that we're going to Keegan Thompson, given the way that we just had a conversation. I have the White Sox 5th overall, 23rd in leverage. Top of the order looks a little underowned. Bottom of the order a little bit overowned for me. I'm more than happy to get to the White Sox, given this implied total. We have them, I don't know, 8th maybe? 4, 8? Yeah, 8th in top stacks and overowned. How do you feel about the White Sox?
The ownership's still pretty close to where it should be. I think it is a good spot for them against Thompson. I think the price tag on Luis Robert looks really, really good. Eloy Jimenez is cheap as well. You have Yasmani Grandal back in the lineup, which makes this lineup just more potent. You don't have Sevi Zavala striking out 40-something% of the time, batting ninth anymore. So it's a little bit deeper lineup. I think they look good. Again, just some other spots right now that I like a little bit more, but certainly not going to fault anyone for going to the White Sox. They have a 5.7 implied run total right now against a pitcher who shouldn't be any good.
That is very much true. Like, Grandal is the guy pulling all the ownership. You can go to a White Sox stack pretty easily without any major ownership in all of it. Like Eloy, 6%. That works for me. Tim Anderson in the leadoff spot at 5%. These guys aren't really getting the ownership that it seems. All righty. Cubs bats against Keuchel. Doesn't seem like something we should do. This lineup is legitimately bad. Highest projected WRC plus from the Cubs lineup, Frank Schwindel at 98, and then 92 or lower after that. This is abysmal.
Yeah, I'm fine with like Schwindel or Wisdom, kind of like I'm fine with Lowe or Garcia from the Rangers, but too big of a slate for me to really want to be getting to the Cubs.
Is the Cubs farm system loaded?
I don't know. I know they're ranked behind the Orioles because everyone is.
Because it's just kind of crazy to me that they could be. I understand what they just sold off, but this is bad. This is real bad. I don't have anything else for White Sox and Cubs.
Same.
We've got about 19 minutes to go until we're out of here. 4 more games to go. I'd give anything to be able to just pause life and go take a leak, but that's not going to happen. So instead, I'm going to talk about Odds Shopper, the presenting sponsor of this show. If you are betting on sports and you're not using Odds Shopper, what are you doing? It's just going to help you out. Don't leave money on the table. Make sure you're shopping around. No place is going to make that easier to do than Odds Shopper. You can even get notifications when these lines move, whether it's regular game lines, player props, player futures, team futures. We've got expected win percentages and expected ROI on the player props. It's totally based on all the projections that we have on the site, but now we could use it for sports betting as well. It's all already there. You can just immediately sort props by expected ROI, find the best line, click on it, and go and just bet on it. It's right there for you, all easily accessible and all completely free. Don't sleep on it any longer. Go to oddshopper.com, sign up, use it. 4 games to go. Next one up, Angels and Padres. 3.7 run implied total for the Angels, 5.3 for the Padres. I have not gotten any extra confirmation. Packy Naughton going for the Angels. Joe Musgrove for the Padres. Musgrove, 16% owned. I think it's proper ownership. Has anything changed for you with regards to your thoughts on Musgrove?
No, still, kind of no idea what you're going to get from him. It's an okay matchup against the Angels. Shohei Ohtani clearly is really, really good. Jared Walsh is a good hitter. Then you start to run into some pretty weak bats that offer a lot of strikeouts. Justin Upton may or may not be in the lineup, but he strikes out quite a bit. Brandon Marsh, Joe Adell have both struck out at really high rates so far in the majors, and Musgrove is better than anything they saw from the Orioles over the course of this week. So I think it's a pretty high upside spot. Musgrove is another one kind of similar to Gossman, where you saw him come out of the gate really, really good this season, and then he dropped off pretty substantially. That coincided with the crackdown in foreign substances. But over his last 5 starts, he's back to close to a 30% strikeout percentage. He's pitched well. He had that game against Colorado where he was just, otherworldly and struck out 11 guys. But in his last 5, he really only has that one bad start, which came against Arizona, so it stood out. But coming off of a good start against Philadelphia, he threw 99 pitches, went 6 innings, 1 run, 9 strikeouts, had the really bad start against Arizona that I referred to. Decent start against Oakland, 6 innings, 5 strikeouts, had the start against Colorado, 7 innings, 11 strikeouts, had one against Miami, 6 innings, 7 strikeouts. He's been good overall recently. So it doesn't feel great, but I do think that he looks like one of the better options tonight.
How good of an option does Packy Naughton look for you?
He doesn't.
If only he got bonus points for having a cool name. Packy Nod would definitely be a guy that I wanted to roster today. Padres Bats guys that you want to roster, they are my 3rd overall stack, but 27th in leverage. They are 5th in our top stack tool. Showing up a little bit overowned. I'm not worried about it. The ownership is going to Fernando Tatis and Manny Machado, and those are the 2 guys that absolutely should be getting owned. And there's a lot more guys that you should own in the Padres lineup. So I'm in for San Diego.
Yeah, I'm there with you. I think they're pretty similar to me for like to like the White Sox. A team that I like. I'm not going to get them, at least the way things look right now. Like I would have Tampa Bay, Toronto, Houston ahead of them, but definitely one of the better options of the 30 teams playing tonight.
Are the Angels Bats a team that you want to get to against Joe Musgrove other than Shohei Ohtani?
Not right now. He's just not projected for enough ownership. 16% is just not going to really move the needle for me on a slate of this size. Shohei Ohtani, of course, is great. Jared Walsh at 4,200 is fine, but not a team that stands out.
Okay. Oakland A's, New York Yankees, 3.6 run implied total for the A's, 4.4 for the Yankees. Sean Manaea, Garrett Cole. Manaea at 16% ownership. Garrett Cole at 22. I don't have it as particularly close. Garrett Cole is my number 1 pitcher on this slate, and it's even easier to do now that his ownership has come down a bit. Talk to me about Garrett Cole in what is very clearly a difficult matchup, but in a really nice park.
Yeah, it's a good park for pitching. It prevents runs. It's not the best for strikeouts because the foul territory on the third base and first base side is about a mile wide in each direction. So a lot of times you kind of lose strikeouts due to that, but still a great strikeout pitcher in Cole. Far and away the number 1 strikeout guy on this slate at 34%. It's also a difficult lineup to get strikeouts against. The A's just don't strike out a lot. So it's a really, really tough matchup. And I think that's why, like I said earlier, I do prefer Aaron Nola if the weather cooperates, but it's definitely one of those situations where I think reasonable minds can differ. I'm not going to say you're crazy if you would rather go to the better pitcher out of the 2, despite the matchup. For me, I just slightly prefer Nola, but also a lot will depend on the projected ownership. Like I said at the top when we talked about Nola, now he's getting like 1.5 times the ownership of Cole. I don't think the gap really should be that big either. I just think they project very, very similarly. Cole is clearly one of the top 2 pitchers tonight.
Yeah, the ownership change is obviously helpful for me. It's not like I needed to get to more Cole, but it's even easier for me now. I think that I am higher on Cole than a lot of the industry in comparison to Nola. Not that I don't like Nola, but I'm still willing to go there. I think the park looks really good. What about Manaea, though? 16% owned, 8,400 in a really, really scary spot against the Yankees. The park tries to help a little bit, but does it feel like a Sean Manaea day?
I'd be more interested if he wasn't projected for ownership because I do think he's a good pitcher. But to me, this feels really similar to the Max Fried spot. And I feel, the same way too. I think the price tag is pretty fair. Manaea at 8,400 is a good salary for the season. He has a 25.9% strikeout percentage, 3.58 xFIP. He's just a good pitcher and he gives you a pretty nice ceiling. But you do have a lot of good right-handed bats in this projected lineup for the Yankees. We don't have the actual lineup yet, but assuming you're going to have LeMahieu, Judge, Stanton, Voit, Urshela, Higashioka in the lineup, Velasquez also would be hitting from the right side. Manaea's strikeout numbers against righties are quite a bit lower this year than against lefties. He's at 22.9% against righties compared to 35.2 against lefties. And it's just a spot where, I think I don't feel strongly one way or the other. Like I don't see a ton of strikeouts here from Manaea unless he's really, really at the top of his game. I don't see him really getting lit up here either. The park helps him as well. I just kind of think the ownership he's getting is where it should be. But I also think that if he's going to get 16% ownership and so is Musgrove, for example, if you can find that $1,200, I would feel better going to Musgrove, I think.
Are you interested in going to the bats here? Now that Manaea is at 16% ownership, Cole at 22, is there a reasonable stance to take to go to these bats?
To the Yankees or to the A's?
Either side, given the current pitching ownership.
Okay, I was gonna say, the Yankees, I think, are in the better spot. They have the higher implied run total here. They're not really getting much ownership, and they are favorably priced. Whenever you can get, Luke Voit at 3,100 or Giancarlo Stanton at 4,100, it's kind of appealing. But with the slate, it's my turn to buy a pack, and it just scared me. It sounded like something like crashing. I didn't know what it was. Anyway, yeah.
You just got scared by your own self.
Yeah, pretty much. Wasn't expecting that. But I think that the salaries are okay on the Yankees. It's just kind of a spot where the slate's really, really big. You have to draw the line somewhere. I think the Yankees just still end up falling in behind, some of these other teams that we've really liked. And then the A's fall behind the Yankees for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't really have anything here. I mean, you can pick off numerous amounts of individual bats if you want one-off power at no ownership. No one's going to be there at all. So I don't really want to advocate for it, but if anybody looks at this game and it's like, oh, can I use Matt Olson? Can I use Giancarlo Stanton as a one-off? Yeah, just do that.
Did you really just buy a $13,000 acorn?
I did.
Why didn't you just buy 5 penguins?
I mean, if we were to have this conversation, that's fine. So I bought a Curio card. Does that do anything to you mentally? Do you know what that means?
No.
So it's an NFT that predates punks, sort of like Mooncats. Okay. They have to be wrapped to even get onto OpenSea, but the full complete set is getting auctioned off at Christie's on October 1st. Okay. And I think that is going to be a big time driving force to shooting this one to the moon, so to speak. I got in sort of at the peak of the pump after that got announced. So it is down a bit, which has been hard to stomach, but I'm in it for a month plus at least, because I think that there's some exceptional upside.
So you didn't buy it just now?
No, 2 days ago.
Oh, okay.
What's today? Friday? I don't know. Yeah. I think Wednesday night. So.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, that all makes sense. I mean, it doesn't at all, but it does.
Yeah. That entire sentence, multiple sentences, did not make sense at all 6 months ago.
Right.
Legitimate made up verbiage. Mariners and Royals, 4.5 run implied total for the Mariners, 3.5 for the Royals. Logan Gilbert and Chris Bubich. The floor is yours here. Logan Gilbert's projected for 31% ownership. How does that read to you?
That seems absurd.
Yes.
I think Logan Gilbert is really talented. I understand why he would get ownership here. I like him here if we're ignoring the 31% ownership projection. Overall this season, he's been really, really good. 26.6% strikeout percentage, 3.94 xFIP. Recently, he has struggled a bit more. I don't know if it's just a coincidence. I don't know if we're kind of getting to a point where he's hitting a wall, because he was in the minor leagues last year, so he didn't have a real season because of COVID. His velocity over the last 5 starts is in line with what he's been doing the entire season. His percentage of pitches in the strike zone over those last 5 starts is in line with his season average. So there's no real glaring thing that stands out there. His 2 worst starts recently were very difficult matchups against Houston and Toronto. He had an okay start against Texas. He was okay against Texas 2 times ago as well, and gave up 3 earned runs in 5 innings against Tampa. So he has had some difficult matchups. It could just, be a small sample size thing for sure. And the salary has come down, so some of those concerns are mitigated anyway. He gets a pretty good matchup against Kansas City tonight. Not the most strikeout-friendly team, but not a good overall offense. The big concern to me, though, is just the ownership. There's so many pitchers on this slate that are in good but not great spots. In Gilbert's case, it's that it's a team that doesn't strike out a lot, but they don't hit really well. There's a lot of pitchers kind of in spots like that. And I don't think that Gilbert should be getting crazy amounts of ownership more than someone like Rodriguez or Musgrove or Manaya. Granted, they're at different prices, but I don't think it's gonna be that difficult to find, $700 to $1,000 for a pitcher. So if ownership holds how it is right now, I think I end up underweight on Gilbert, even though I do ownership agnostic, like $7,700 Logan Gilbert.
He showed up in 11% of my sims. Now, again, caveat here, Andre Jackson is making up a big part of this. I assume Logan Gilbert would climb at least a little bit, given Jackson being taken out, but still 31% feels outlandish to me. I don't agree with it at all. No matter what changes get made, I will not agree with it. This is the easiest guy to not be on from a pitching perspective. Bubich, I think he's probably really just dependent on Andre Jackson for you.
Yeah, he's just another one in that same group with Keuchel and with Odorizzi. He hasn't been great in the major leagues this year. The matchup is okay against Seattle. Overall, he's got a 21% strikeout percentage, 2.6 home runs per 9, 4.55 xFIP. He hasn't been good, but neither is Jake Odorizzi, neither is Dallas Keuchel, really neither is Rich Hill. It's, to me, just kind of a coin flip between those guys, who's going to come out and have the best game. So that's why I think that they should all be pretty similarly owned. But assuming we're going to get Andre Jackson tonight, and I'm planning on building my lineups as if we're going to, I just don't really think I get to them much at all.
Oh, gosh, this is a crazy one. I would ask you to start with the Mariners, but Should we be rostering the Kansas City Royals against this Logan Gilbert ownership?
If it were a smaller slate, I'd be more interested. As is, I think that Perez is a good catcher option, although he is really expensive. Merrifield's always fine. Nicky Lopez is cheap. Benintendi's cheap, but there's just so many good offenses tonight that aren't getting a ton of ownership. It makes it a lot more difficult for me to get to a team like Kansas City strictly for, negative correlation with Gilbert.
Yeah, I wish they graded out better. I have them 29th overall, so I can't really justify bumping them up all that much further. They just don't look good. So I get the path. Like there's definitely a reason that you should do it. I just don't know how viable it is today. For the Mariners, I'm mostly indifferent. There's some righty power here that I'd be happy to get to. I think they're a little underowned as a team, but they're not really a priority for me.
Yeah, same here. I think individually, Haniger and Seager look good. Bubic has struggled with hitters from both sides of the plate this year. Haniger is just a good hitter overall. So is Kyle Seager. He hits lefties well also. So those two individually, Ty France, you can throw in there as a 3-man. But in terms of 5-man stacks, again, just some teams I like more.
Well, we got one more game to go. Pace this one out perfectly as per usual. Dodgers and Rockies, 5.2 run implied total for the Dodgers, 3.4 for the Rockies. Andre Jackson going for the Dodgers, Kyle Freeland going for the Rockies. I mean, we've been talking about him a lot. I guess we should probably give everybody the info now. The expectation is that Andre Jackson is the starter for the Dodgers. He is the flat minimum 4K in a matchup against a below average Rockies team with some strikeouts in there. But when push comes to shove, it's a 4K pitcher going for the Dodgers. What do you want to do with Andre Jackson if he is the starter for LA?
I'm planning on rostering a lot of him. I don't know that he'll be the starter. I do think he's going to pitch, at least based on what we've seen so far. In his only major league appearance, he came out of the bullpen behind an opener through 4 innings. Steamer projects him with 8.2 strikeouts per 9. He has spent most of his time at AA this season, had a 29.6% strikeout percentage there. He's climbed the ranks as the season's gone on within the Dodgers organization, but he's only 4K. If we assume we're going to get like 4 innings from him against the Rockies, there's just not a strong mid-range of pitchers on this slate. And so I would rather just pay down for Jackson. We don't have anything official. The best that I can find is from a writer that covers the Dodgers, said TBAs Friday and Sunday. This is from 12:45 a.m. Eastern, so last night, this morning. Those TBAs Friday and Saturday remain for the Dodgers, sandwiched around David Price starting on Saturday. Tomorrow is officially a bullpen game against the Rockies, meaning today. If needed, Andre Jackson can be recalled Friday and Mitch White on Sunday once each of their 10 days are up. Convenient. So it sounds like the expectation is that you're going to get Andre Jackson recalled from AAA. He's already with the team. He's been with the team the entire time. So they just can't call him up until today because of the last time they sent him down. So it seems like the expectation is that he's going to be recalled and they'll, get him some innings.
Freeland?
I don't see it. The Dodgers are just too good for me to want to go to Freeland. I think he's a better pitcher than people give him credit for, and he is outside of Coors Field, but his salary also rose. It's not like you're getting the $5,700 Freeland anymore. He's 7K flat. I'm not going to get there.
Dodgers are my number 7 overall stack, number 4 in leverage. They are pulling no ownership. I'm not all that worried about going up against Kyle Freeland, particularly when I'm the Dodgers. This is another team that I think you should be rostering pretty aggressively, and they're pulling no ownership.
Same here. They're not getting much ownership for the season. Freeland's allowed a 168 expected ISO, 303 expected WOBA to righties. Certainly not numbers that you're actively seeking out to target with like an average team, but the Dodgers are just better than an average team. You have Turner, you have Muncy, you have Turner. You should have Muncy back. You do have Betts back. Seager, other Turner, Will Smith. Like this lineup's just so good, top to bottom. Chris Taylor, Cody Bellinger probably in there as well. Not getting much ownership. I think that for me, they do still come in, at least the way ownership looks right now. They come in behind teams like Houston, but I think that the Dodgers look like a top 5-ish stack for me.
Are you in the new Osaka drop? 56 seconds before it opens.
Nope, thanks.
Yep. I think so. Last one was 100. This is another spot where I just don't understand. Same as the Astros. The Astros and the Dodgers are basically the same team to me. They're not pulling any ownership. They're ultra high end offenses. I just want to take my chances here if they're not getting ownership on a day like today.
Yeah, same here. To me, there's just a lot of teams that have similar chances of success. So I typically want to play the lowest owned ones. And in the case of the Dodgers, they are one of the highest upside teams that is also one of the lowest owned.
Anything else you want to touch on? We are at the end of it all before we turn this one over to the live before lock crew.
Now it sums it up for me.
Favorite stacks. Give me that, and then we're out of here.
The way things look right now, Tampa, Houston, Dodgers, I think. White Sox.
Dodgers and Astros. Yeah, Red Sox, White Sox.
Yeah, a
lot to like.
It's still going to depend on that Boston lineup for me because we don't know, or at least I haven't seen it. It might have been announced during the show, but who exactly, if anyone, is out along with Kike.
There we go, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Stick around. Don't leave this link. MLB Live Before Lock coming up next. Good luck tonight, everybody. Enjoy your weekend if I don't get to talk to you. Peace.
Live Before Lock, and a little bit of a mix-up today because Gundack and I were usually together on Saturdays. A little bit of added pleasure. We get to work together on Fridays. How's that shaping up your weekend?
I just assumed that there's a stipulation in your Awesemo contract that we have to be together on Kyle Freeland start days. It always lines up that way. But yeah, hey, I'm glad to chop up baseball any day of the week.
Hey, not only is it a Kyle Freeland day, it's a low-owned Kyle Freeland day. Although this one in particular, I'm not sure is one I'm going to be all that excited about. There's other spots I'd rather get to, but in general, Kyle Freeland, he's been pretty kind to me on some of these shows we've done together. But not only is Kyle Freeland pitching, but this should be a big day for you. We've got your guy Garrett Cole on the mound today, and I don't know if there's anybody who we'd want, some pertinent Yankee takes other than you. So for today, let's start right at the pitching like we normally do. And Garrett Cole, what do you make of him today? Fairly tough matchup against the Oakland A's, but he's Garrett Cole. He's going to be popular. Is he somebody that you want to get to at a pretty high rate in tournaments?
Yeah. So I also like I want to get to like Austin Nolan and Shane McClanahan, some of those guys at a decent tick as well. But that's going to be weather permitted decision. So at the very least, right now, Garrett Cole is like a pitcher I could put as a late swap candidate. He's not going to have concerns. He's got a plus park, and he's Garrett Cole. So I definitely want Garrett Cole, but I also want these other pitchers if the rain will let me do it. So I'm not going to be like a 70% homer guy. I don't necessarily think the Athletics is like a massive strikeout lineup that taps into upside, but I also think 10.5K gives me a ceiling shot or a decent shot at Florida ceiling in a plus park. So I'm in on Cole. I'll probably be at least the field, but there's a chance I end up with more than I wanted to if the weather doesn't go our way.
Yeah, I mean, I really don't mind getting to him, especially this slate. 14 games, we have a lot of options, pretty spread out. Ownership is not really all that much of an issue right now. If you look at our pitcher ownership, at the top, we've got Garrett Cole right now on DK, project for 24% ownership, 31 for Noah. Logan Gilbert, pretty popular at 30, but it's not like there's any one guy picking up a massive amount of ownership. Over on FanDuel, 15% to Logan Gilbert, 22 for Noah, only 5 for Garrett Cole. That does make me think that he's a pretty strong GPP option. Over there on FanDuel, also top pitchers to a bet is free today over on Awesemo.com. So you guys want to check out some of our ownership projections for the pitchers, our odds of pitchers being a top scoring pitcher on the slate. Go check that out for free. But I think the big thing we really have to look at with Garrett Cole is, I think in comparison to him with Aaron Nola, just given that these are the two top overall aces I consider on the slate, they're kind of in a price tier by themselves. Shane McClanahan's also pretty expensive at $10,700 on DK. FanDuel is $10,500. I just don't really have interest in him in that kind of price point. So I'm mostly comparing Cole to Nola. Of the two, which do you think is the better option?
I love Aaron Nola. He's been a beast. I would say this D-backs lineup is actually a little scrappier strikeout wise than maybe it gets credit for. But I mean, Nola's been a rock at the house. So I think right now I'm slightly going to Garrett Cole, but it's not a snap call.
Yeah, for me, I think Nola is safer for cash games. For tournaments, what is kind of making me think that I slightly lean Cole is just the ownership, particularly on FanDuel. DK, it's a little more splitting hairs. FanDuel, though, I certainly prefer Cole for about a fourth of the ownership. But for cash games, I feel a little bit better with Nola. I think a lot of people might look at his ERA and see, a 4.33 ERA. Look at the underlying numbers for him. They're pretty solid at 3.54 expected ERA for Aaron Nola, a 3.51 FIP. The strikeout rate's been there. His walks are actually down quite a bit this year from last year. So 5.6% walk rate this year compared to 8% last year, 9.4% the year before. Still a strong strikeout rate at 29.3%. Really his issue has mostly been just a little bit of an inflated home run to fly ball rate, a little bit unlucky in terms of strand rate. For his career, 74.8% left on base rate. This year, 70.2%. It's a little bit of bad luck for Aaron Nola, but all stuff that should regress. He looks like a guy who should have an ERA somewhere in the mid threes, so wouldn't fret over that too much. And obviously the Diamondbacks, even if their team is maybe a little harder to strike out than most teams, like you said, it's still a weak hitting lineup. So I'll ask you, for cash games, would you be more comfortable with Nola or Cole on FanDuel at least?
I'm still thinking Cole here. And when I said, the D-backs maybe don't strike out that much, the Athletics don't either, but at least the park is a little bit more favorable. And one of the benefits of Garrett Cole, I think, today is the Yankees had to dip into that bullpen really early yesterday. So, they're probably asking him to go a little bit longer. And I do like that for FanDuel's sake to hopefully, throw a net over the quality start. I think Nola's okay for that as well. But I can't completely ignore that weather could be a thing. So I think that's like my cheap tiebreaker. But yeah, I'm still kind of Cole, but I'm fine with both. If we didn't have weather concern here, I'd probably have dang near the same amounts of both. I like them that much. You're asking me to pick between kids right now.
Yeah. And I'm not, how much are you backing off because of the weather? Because right now I look at the weather report and it's something to keep an eye on, and also keep in mind that because we have the NFL, the preseason live before lock coming up after us, which is, all the more reason, stick around after we're done, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel so you get all the information for all of DFS sports we have here. It's it's not like this is a 50 or 60% chance of rain. If you use my trusted weather source, google.com, we're looking at like 25 to 30% chance of rain. So that's not something that's really backing me off it right now. It is something, once again, keep an eye on. We have a couple of hours until the game starts. But is this something that's like drastically changing your ownership to players?
So, I mean, I don't I kind of just trust some of the weathermen out there. And, he kind of graded it as pretty risky to maybe risky. So I was just kind of going off of that. And the fact that it looks like the rain, when it does come, is like it's could be midway through the game. This Phillies offense may not have quick innings going against Taylor Widener in this bullpen. So I would even like it seems like we're going to get the first pitch, but maybe it interferes through the game. And I mean, I guess that game where Nola was dicing up, was it the Dodgers, and they ended up getting rain delayed on, like maybe that could happen here again. But I don't like to play weatherman. So your number seems a lot lower in contrast to the risk level that I'm looking at. So maybe I should do my due diligence. Are you getting to Nola confidently?
As of now, yes. But like I said, there's 2 hours left. Also, news got on Negro Loco. He does a really good job in our Slack chat of posting some of the weather updates. It's also one of those things, like here's the biggest thing that I dislike about when we have to change some of the live before lock times. I don't like when we don't get to do live for lock before lock. So it is something where it's like, I wish I could confidently tell you that this is what the weather's going to be, but weather's fickle and it tends to change a lot. So we still have 2 hours until the game started. If we had to submit lineups and lock them in right now, it would personally not be a massive concern for me. But it's still something. There's going to be a couple hours. We get more information. And I'll say this: if you guys are in our premium Slack channel, you can message me and I'll say where I'm at with this, or on Twitter, tweet at me and I'll answer any questions you have. You could DM me. I'm very codependent and I feel that I need to answer everybody's questions all the time. So we'll see where this is. We've got the news guide right now on Negro Loco in the YouTube chat. But once again, there's a lot of time until we actually get to the start of the game. But as of right now, it's not something that would be a massive concern for me. One other guy I want to ask you about in the high end of the pricing tier, because there's been times this year you've liked him. What are you doing with Shane Mcclanahan, who is clearly in a good spot, has great strikeout stuff, but he's so expensive?
Mcclanahan's auto parts. Yeah, I'm again, the weather just kind of is the question mark here. But I think matchup wise, not so much matchup wise, but talent wise, I like Mcclanahan. But 10.7K is kind of a tall glass of water to sip on. And there are some decent ISOs in this Orioles lineup against lefties, right? Not staggering, but not like D-backs levels or non-Ohtani Angels level. So I'm not that excited about it. I think if you told me that we can get a decent shot at a clean pitching game from him in terms of innings, I'd have some, but it definitely would be a lot less than I've had in the past due to that 10.7K price point. It just feels wrong to go over Nola and Garrett Cole often when you consider the price points, but I want to be there at a little bit. Looking at our top pitchers tool here, we got him at what, 0.5%? So versus his percentage to be a top two. So 8% was kind of the number I had in my mind, and I didn't think he would be that low on. But like I said, if you can tell me weather would not impede his chance to pitch today, I'd be there at least 8%. It looks like I'd be well above the field at 0.5%.
Yeah, I think there's definitely an ownership argument to be made in the build that I have right now. I do not personally have Mcclanahan in it right now. It's just, for me, I much prefer getting to Nola and Cole, but like I said, 0.5% ownership, not somebody who's hard to get overweight to. I am pretty concerned about the weather in this spot, looking at about a 40% chance of rain and also pretty sustained rain. So like you said, that could be an issue that pops up. That's something that to me right now, I feel like it's not really a pressing issue to get to Mcclanahan. There's other options that I like in this price range. I don't think he's super likely to be optimal. But I get the ownership argument where it's so low, and there could be a couple of reasons for it. Number one, the price. Number two, the weather. So once again, we need an update, although I don't think that he's somebody who I'm going to really be dying to get to either way. And I guess one other guy in this price range also that that bears talking about, although he's a little bit cheaper. Kevin Gausman, 9,900 on DK, 10,100 on FanDuel. Another guy I'm just not interested in. Really tough matchup in Atlanta, and Kevin Gausman has dropped off in a fairly significant way over the last couple of months.
Yeah, I feel like right now he's kind of my panic button. Like in case of rain break window and pull out Gausman to not have 80% Garrett Cole. It's not fun to pitch against the Braves. I do have some respect for them, even though they have some high strikeout ability in that lineup. But like you said, Gausman lately hasn't turned in like incredible numbers for this price point, and really for the thought of every what could be every team in the league playing. You really don't think 18 to 19 at almost 10K is a super a likely number to make you compete for top of your tournament. So like he is my panic button if I do lose Mcclanahan and Nola, to at least diversify a little bit of Garrett Cole. And like I said, this Braves lineup does have just two guys under a 20% K rate against righties since the beginning of last year. So like I'm not scared to play him, but I don't want to play him. So, and if I did, I'd just be like praying for 20 plus.
I'm not even sure if that's likely. Since July 11th, he's only had one start where he scored over 19 DraftKings points. And some of his recent starts, and even in positive matchups, the Mets offense has not been all that great lately. And Gausman, that start, 18 fantasy points against the Diamondbacks, another easy matchup, 18 fantasy points. Against Pittsburgh, he scored -5 fantasy points. And one of the other things, too, that's been a little concerning with Gausman, they've been a little more conservative with his pitch count over the last 6 weeks or so. And I think there's a couple reasons for that. Number one, he just hasn't been quite as good as of late. The other thing to consider also is that when there was no full season last year, we're starting to see fatigue kind of set into me with some of these pitchers down the stretch. Corbin Burns, his last couple of starts, he's walked more guys, and we've seen a little bit of a dip in strikeouts. It's also been an issue with guys like Brandon Woodruff, Jack Wheeler in the second half of the season. And there's certain guys, if I see any sort of dip in velocity, dip in strikeout rate, uptick in walk rate, maybe a dip in pitch count, these are all signs to me that guys could potentially be fatigued. Kevin Gausman kind of falls into that category for me. That adds an element that makes him a little hard for me to get to. Now, somebody else I want to ask you about who I hate. This is my least favorite player in all of DFS this year. Who do you think I'm going to ask you about?
Joe Musgrove.
This guy is the worst. I mean, just put this guy in the garbage. Can we just every time San Diego plays and you schedule the pitch, just rain out or something. Put him in like the 6 p.m. Eastern time, where it's just not on any of the main slates. Because Joe Musgrove, 9,200 on FanDuel. On DK, he's 9,600. There's considerable upside in Joe Musgrove. But what are we ever getting out of this guy? It's like, oh, he's in a tough matchup. He scores 28 fantasy points. It's like, oh, we're going to put Joe Musgrove in an easy matchup against the Diamondbacks. He's going to have 5 runs before he's gotten it out in the first inning. I never know what to do with this guy. There's enough upside that I feel he has to be in my player pool, but it's so unpredictable. I'm just going to kind of try to level myself with the field and say, hey, my night's going to be made or broken by people who are not Joe Musgrove.
This Angels lineup has a lot of strikeout potential in it. So
it's the worst.
So I gotta be there on that. Another one of those spots where if we lose Nola, we lose Mcclanahan, I probably end up with more Musgrove than I plan to if I, not weather considered. But yeah, I gotta play the matchup and eat the results. Maybe I'll throw like a 2%, 3% hedge stack in the back of my pocket. But it's one of those spots where if you're scared of Musgrove doing good, after Ohtani and Walsh, like you don't feel comfortable clicking names here. So even the head stack kind of makes me throw up a little bit in my mouth. But I'm in agree. Like I understand the Musgrove pain. I feel like at least like in his last 7 games, there's been more good than bad. So I'll let that maybe ease my pain. But yeah, it's definitely a guy. He has been a guy that has ruined a wet dream, right? So give me Musgrove, but hopefully I don't have to get too egregious on him due to weather. But the matchup's the matchup, and it's a good one.
Yeah, his last handful of starts, it's 4 fantasy points, 4, 15, 1, 17, 39, 17, 28, 0, 26. This dude is the absolute worst. It's a matchup against a team that strikes out a whole bunch, and it's something that's pretty hard to totally ignore. Joe Musgrove, we've seen him be all over the place. Something else to consider: he's going to be in the American League. He's going to be in American League Park. He has to face DH. He's going to be Shohei Ohtani instead of a pitcher. I think, is this a reasonable way to approach it? I'm just going to look at, oh, look, Musgrove's projected for 15% ownership. I'm going to play 15% Joe Musgrove. I'll win or lose elsewhere. Is that kind of what you feel like you want to do as well?
I mean, I feel like everything that we say has to be asterisk due to weather. 15% would probably be where I'm at if everyone's on the board. If I lose these Easterners, you might see me at 25%. So yeah, it would be contingent on the option to get to Nola and or Mcclanahan.
All right. And then anybody else, because it kind of puts a bow on the guys that I'm most interested in the high end of the pricing range. But for you, is there anybody who's expensive that you're getting to, or anybody that's expensive that's picking up ownership that is just not for you on this slate?
Expensive. Let's say
anybody who's like 80. We'll make Manaea the cutoff. Anybody 84, anybody 8,400 or higher on DK.
No, not probably not 84 other in terms of like arguing about it. No, I feel like me and you have also been on a J-Hap versus the Pirates slate before, and he performed well. So like maybe that's the segue into the next level. But as far as like that price range, I don't necessarily see anything that I find overly egregious or that I disagree with. I guess the Manaea ownership at 15% might be something I'm a little tongue-in-cheek about, but perhaps that's a little bit of biasness. I just thought this Yankees team is a freaking stick of dynamite right now. They're giving you strikeouts, but they're also giving you problems.
Yeah, if Manaea was less popular, because there's been spots with the Yankees, the Yankees were one of my favorite stacks last night. And it's a situation with New York where if they're really popular, I just don't really want to be on them. And I'll kind of have interest if it's a decent starting pitcher, because when the Yankees don't have a big game, it's a team that's going to strike out a lot. However, when the Yankees are lower owned, maybe going up against a good pitcher, I want to be on the Yankees because I just don't really care who they're going. Like, this offense is so ridiculously good. Like, oh, Kaprelian starting last night, whatever. I'll roster the Yankees. I'll play a bunch of Giancarlo Stanton and hope for a home run because I think this team has potential to, put up runs against anybody. Shohei Manaea has been solid this year. It is overall pitcher-friendly park, but I still side towards the Yankees just because Manaea is picking up a whole bunch of ownership today, and the Yankees aren't. The Yankees, the team, are picking up 1% ownership. Manaea is picking up 15%. So give me the Yankee side of the equation right there. It's just Manaea, if he was lower owned, then I'd say, like, okay, there's upside. But the field's there. That's a little curious to me. So I'm going to be avoiding him personally.
Yeah, I mean, and if we we poo-poo on Joe Musgrove due to his inefficiency, those last 4 games of the Sean Manaea experience not been great. So Chupapi Manaea, I'm not at 15%. I don't even know if I get any percentage, but I didn't want to look like the biased fat guy.
Yeah. Hey, listen, you're not going to be both of those things right now, but maybe one of them. But it's. I think that everything you said, I agree with, and I think you're being pretty unbiased about it. You said that, like, hey, Garrett Cole rates out well, but you're trying to cut back on ownership, which I also think is reasonable. But now let's talk about the guy you just brought up, J-Hap, who did pitch fairly well last time out against Pittsburgh. It was a really weird game because I basically didn't have, I think I might have had 0 J-Hap in my player pool that day, and I stacked the Pirates pretty heavily. And the Pirates ended up being a good stack that day. And J-Hap pitched well because the Pirates ended up hitting like 3 or 4 homers or something that game. And Hap, the only 2 runs he allowed were off of solo homer. So it was a weird thing where it was almost like, hey, what would have been optimal today? You roster J-Hap and the Pirates going against him. Overall for the season, I still struggle to get behind J-Hap. Also, the difference with this slate versus last slate, if I remember correctly, the last time out, there just wasn't good cheap pitching options. And it was also like a 3 or 4 game slate. So we just gravitated towards Hap. But now he's 8,000. That's a little more expensive on DK. Also on FanDuel, single pitcher side, I don't think there's a real need to get to J-Hap at 8,100 on FanDuel. So not a lot of interest for me from either side. And the Pirates, the only reason I liked them against Hap last time out was because we had Hap projected for like 48% ownership. There's no real leverage to be gained. So I'm kind of good with staying away from both sides. But is there anything with J-Hap that you saw last game that does make you want to get to him this time?
No, I mean, not really. I don't feel like he's a 8 strikeout, 6 inning guy, right? Like that's not presumably not sustainable for him. But you mentioned the Pirates going off late in that game. They did it again last night, so maybe they're a second half team. Isaiah Thomas in the fourth quarter type team. I don't know. But AK for J Happ, like if weather made stuff really, really weird, maybe I throw him in the back end and just hope for 16 to 20, right? Two outings against the Pirates in the last couple starts since he's been with the Cardinals. He's got to 20 plus. So like, I guess it is a range of outcome, but it's definitely not something that, like, if I just followed the metrics, like, I wouldn't really get here that often. I don't know if Michael Chavis was on the team in that last start, but they've added him. You know, he's a high strikeout guy, but he also has a decent, a little bit of pop against righties. And if Happ, isn't going to be a strikeout pitcher, maybe there's a little bit more speed bumps in this lineup than there was last time.
Here's one thing that does make me a little bit uncomfortable, and I'm almost positive I'm not going to be playing J Happ tonight. In the build that I made most recently, I had 0% exposure to Happ. If he makes it in any lineups, it would be like one or two of them, nothing significant. If you go to our MLB player prop tool, which is a free tool to use over at Awesemo.com, it's really helpful if you guys like placing any kind of prop bets for MLB. We have as our number one prop bet of the day, J Happ over 4.5 strikeouts. It's also at plus money. We have that hitting 65% of the time. So I'm going to ask you, J Happ, in terms of that strikeout prop, what do you think of over under 4.5? What do you have him projected for?
So my model, if I give him 90 pitches, I get 6.5.
All right. Well, there we go. That's right around what we have for him here as well. So maybe that's the way to get exposure to J Happ, sports bet. And it is plus money too. It's not like it's minus 120 or anything. It's plus 105 for J Happ. That have over 4.5 strikeouts. Also, one of the best ways to bet on sports, player props, lines, futures, anything, head on over to OddsShopper or over at Awesemo.com. It is a really good way to just compare odds when you're trying to place a sports bet. And why would you pay minus 115 for J Happ strikeout prop and get it at plus 105 in another book? So head on over to OddsShopper, and just a good way to shop around, compare different odds at different books. Make sure you're getting the best price, right? There's no reason to pay $15 for something when you can pay $12. So other pitchers, I think the next guy we need to talk about, Logan Gilbert, massively popular today. He is the value pitcher du jour on the slate, 7,700 on ZK, also picking up 29.4% ownership right now, making him the second most popular pitcher on the slate behind Aaron Nola. Over on FanDuel, Logan Gilbert at 8,000, picking up 15% ownership. That feels a little rich to me for a single pitcher site, but what are you doing with Logan Gilbert against the Royals today?
I mean, just in and of himself, it definitely feels like that ownership is ridiculous. I wouldn't hate the thought of getting to some of 7.7K Gilbert, looking for that 20 DKP. But if he's coming in at 30%, and then, like I said, if there is a couple of names plucked from the board because of rain, like, you feel like the medium price guy can only go up. I do think if we get Andre Jackson into the slate, maybe that'll dilute the number a little bit. But I feel like I'm okay with the matchup. I'm okay with the play. But now we start talking about probabilities and ownership. That seems aggressive. So I wouldn't want to be there at 30% to like the field is currently projected to be at. I would probably only be at half of that.
So I'll just say the build I have right now, I have 22% Logan Gilbert, and that's a number which, hey, I have exposure to him, not quite as much as the field in cash games. Obviously, all weather pending, as long as everything checks out. My priority would still be on DraftKings to play Aaron Nola and Garrett Cole together. FanDuel, my priority be to play Aaron Nola. But if you do need to save salaries, to save salary pitching, then for cash games, I think Logan Gilbert and Aaron Nola is a fine combination. But there's nobody for cash games I would consider on DK or FanDuel outside of Nola, Cole, and Gilbert. Is that something you agree with?
Gilbert and cash?
Based on ownership, if you need to save salary, like who else would you feel comfortable going cheap?
I see what you're saying. Just like, hey, if 40% of us are going to have it, I'll just ride it. And I guess I definitely like Nola and Cole and cash. Gilbert feels a little, I don't know, a little more risky. One of the cases I made for Kikuchi yesterday, and he didn't pan out well, but you get at least give some slack to these Mariners pitchers because they've had a really rough strength of schedule, outside of the guys that did get to the Angels and Rangers. So maybe I'll believe in them a little bit more today because it is the Royals. It's essentially, can you get past Salvador Perez or Whit Merrifield and get some outs? And I think he can. So I don't got them getting shelled. So if I'm just looking for 18, all right. If you think he's gonna be aggressively owned in cash, I'm not really a cash game grinder, so I guess it wouldn't be fair for me to put someone off of them if that's their format.
Yeah, and the other thing I'll say about Gilbert here, he does have a 5.16 ERA. His underlying numbers, once again, somebody who's much better than what his actual ERA suggests. 3.89 expected ERA, 3.74 FIP. Really good strikeout stuff from Logan Gilbert in his rookie year. So his K rate is sitting at 26.6%. Good walk rate of 5.5%. He's really been done in by bad sequencing. He has a 63.4% strand rate. He's not giving up that many hits, but this is just random patterns. When he's been giving up hits, he's been giving them up in a row, or he's been giving them up together. He's been giving them up just in bunches. And that's the reason that we're really seeing the inflated ERA. Nothing that I would expect to maintain going forward. I expect to see something more like Steamer. His projection for the rest of the year, 3.93 ERA. That's more in line with his underlying metrics. So I think that Logan Gilbert is a pretty solid pitcher. The matchup against the Royals is fine. So if I'm rostering one cheap guy in cash, it would be Logan Gilbert. But still, Torrance, I think he's going a little bit aggressively over him, but no problem getting to him whatsoever. Now I'll ask you, in terms of any other cheap pitchers today, is there anybody that you want to, I won't say plant your flag in, but maybe somebody who you feel decently good about from a cheap pitcher? It's kind of a hodgepodge of whatever options, in my opinion.
So, I mean, this is like, speculation, but Andre Jackson is 4K, pretty decent pitcher, low opportunity, like the lowest opportunity you can ask for cost wise. So I'd probably be there at a fun SP2 level. I know you like to get to sometimes the 6K Freelands against decent spots. You gotta love the thought of a 4K Alex Jackson, right? Or Andre Jackson, Alex Jackson.
It's so hard to say because it's like how many pitches did you give him in your projection? Like that's the thing I really struggle with is I just don't know what we're going to see from him in terms of length. So his last time out, he threw 4 innings in a long relief appearance, and the result he had 5 strikeouts but 4 walks. I'm going to look at his minor league box score to see how much he was stretched out, and it's not that much. His last handful of minor league starts 5 2/3 innings, 3 innings, 5 innings, 4 1/3. The price point is right, but I'm just not sure how much length we're getting out of him.
It seems like even that August 16th game where he went 4, he had 4 walks there. So it seems like he's a little bit inefficient with his pitches. If he could stay in the zone here, I don't know. At 4K, like I've done worse to treat it as a bat. So I don't think that would be like a 20%er for me, but I feel like I'd have some fun at 15% and pair it with like the 10 plus K guys, and then allow me to, depending on what this Red Sox lineup is and White Sox stuff, allow me to get some of those. But like, as far as, bottom of the barrel price point pitchers, like he would probably be one of them that I'd take some chances on. Past him, I'm really not that enamored with much down there. I think Dallas Keuchel has an intriguing case just because, I've said it before. I'd probably roster you, Greg, against the Chicago Cubs right now and feel like there's a decent chance I get decent return here. So I guess Keuchel's a guy that we could trust pitch count wise, kind of like Hap though. Like he's not a guy that generally gets, strikeouts at an elevated rate, but if you can give me 80 to 100 pitches, eat some innings, and maybe still more strikeouts than usual, maybe at 6,600, Keuchel does kind of fit that with a little bit more common sense than the Andre Jackson take. And I do think Keuchel, seems like very likely to walk away with the plus points for the win. So maybe even on FanDuel, he's had a crazy shot at a QS and a win, and maybe a strikeout per inning. Thoughts?
No, absolutely not. It's Dallas Keuchel. He couldn't listen. You would roster me against the Cubs, but Dallas Keuchel wouldn't strike me out. That's Dallas Keuchel. This dude strikes out nobody. So let me look through Dallas Keuchel's K rate this year, 14.1%. That has to be the lowest of any pitcher who's like a sustained starter in the major leagues. When do you think is the last time Dallas Keuchel struck out more than a hitter per inning this year?
It probably hasn't happened that I can think of. I see the answer now, but the Twins game, right?
Yeah, it's happened twice all year. A game against the Twins, July 20th, he struck out 6 in 5 innings. And then he had a game against the Blue Jays. Kind of weird. The Blue Jays of all offenses, like the Blue Jays, maybe the most difficult team to strike out and have success against in all baseball. June 10th, Dallas Keuchel, 6 innings, 8 strikeouts against him. But other than that, looking at a guy with a 14% strikeout rate, I just don't roster him for that reason. I typically don't stack against him though either, because he does a pretty good job of limiting damage, limiting hard contact. So he's a guy, you look at his numbers for the year, 4.71 ERA. His underlying numbers are worse, except he's always been a guy who's pitched better than his underlying number. So to me, Dallas Keuchel, I don't have interest in rostering him, don't have interest in stacking against him. So that to me kind of wraps up all of the starting pitchers. If anybody has, we do have Thomas Tyner in the chat says that he'd rather play Odorizzi. I agree with that. I don't think that Odorizzi is the best fantasy pitcher in the world either, but he's picking up marginally. He's a marginally better strikeout pitcher than Dallas Keuchel, but kind of everybody is. The only real concern I have with Odorizzi, 6,700. He's going to be somewhat popular, 15% ownership. I don't mind having a handful of Jake Odorizzi lineups, but I don't want him to be like the crux of a bunch of lineups.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. Like basically these 6K guys, I'm not necessarily overthinking strikeouts. I'm just, can I pay off my salary with fantasy points? Yeah, strikeouts definitely key here. And I don't protect Keuchel especially well. Same with Odorizzi, but you could definitely see above 30% range of outcomes to get to 16 plus and maybe knocking a door of 20. Odorizzi is another guy that not consistently going to hit that mark. At Texas has been kind of a trolley spot for some of the pitchers that seem like they're in good spots. But yeah, I understand the play, but those are plays that like just literally bottom of the barrel diversification plays that fill out the back end of some lineups. Definitely not anything that I'm prioritizing.
All right. Anything else to bring up here? If not, we could head over to the offenses.
I did want your take on
Kyle Freeland.
Matz or Miley, right? Those two are kind of like a couple southpaws that are over 10% owned by the field. I can easily push back on both. I feel like 9,200 for Miley, like not even if there's a fire do I feel good about that. But Matz is the one that I can't decide which side of the fence I want to be more on, right? Do I want to take some Tiger stacks? Because I could fill out, a Scope, a Grossman, a Eric Haas, even a Miggy here and there. But like, I don't think it's crazy to assume that, Tigers could have a 1-4 K rate against Steven Matz at 8,200 and get you maybe a 20 bomb. What side of that coin flip are you on?
10% guy for me. I'm not massively different. And by the way, I've been anti Steven Matz for years now. Like he's somebody I've never rostered. I've generally stacked against him. For this year, though, he's been serviceable. He's a 3.94 ERA, a 4.08 expected ERA, 22.4% K rate. The Tigers' offense isn't particularly good. So getting to Steven Matz somewhere around 10 to 15%, no issue for me. Wade Miley, not enough upside for me at that kind of price point. It's just a really exorbitant price to pay for Miley. It is a good matchup against the Marlins. Although with that said, it's Wade Miley. Like, what are we really expecting in terms of ceiling from him? He's kind of like a souped up version of Dallas Keuchel. And it's a lot to pay. Obviously, good matchup in Miami. And actually somebody else who I'm going to ask you, what do you actually have for him for a strikeout projection? Because his sportsbook number is also over under 4.5. So we have the over with a 19% ROI in our player props tool.
For Wade Miley?
Yeah. 4.5 does seem like a low number going up against the Marlins.
Yeah, let me see. K Factory. What are we thinking?
I also don't want to play a pitcher at 9,200 who has a 4.5 over under for his strikeout rate. And then over on FanDuel, Wade Miley, who was actually somewhat popular last time pitch. He's 8,800 on FanDuel and picking up 9% ownership. I just think it's so unlikely that Wade Miley lands in an optimal lineup in tournaments. He's, a safe play, but I don't think you need plays that are that safe. Like that's like a 6 condom play, right? Like you don't how much protection do you need in your lineups? But what do you have for your projection on him?
You're not gonna like it. It's actually one of the more egregious numbers. But let me just explain. When you throw 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 guys with over 30% K rates, a pitcher, and a couple of guys that don't really have enough numbers to stabilize. You're going to get a really ridiculous number. And I got a really ridiculous number. So I don't even know if it's worth saying, but just know that it's well over that prop. But these K rates in the Marlins lineup against lefties, I don't know how much sample size is behind them to really, expect it to stabilize at this rate. But yeah, my number is above that, but it's so far above it that I just laugh at it.
Yeah, I mean, fair enough. It is something, once again, our player prop model does like the over for Wade Miley's strikeouts. And if you do look at the Marlins is a team of 28% K rate against left-handed pitching. There's not a single other team in the league that's over 26.5%. So it's a team that's generated a whole bunch of swing and misses, but I just don't know that Wade Miley's capable of doing that kind of thing. He started against the Marlins his last time out, and he struck out 3 batters. His season high for strikeouts, he's hit 8 a couple of times, but for the most part, he's generally striking out 3 to 5 hitters. Due to the strikeout rate of the Marlins, I wouldn't mind taking the over, but I don't feel all that comfortable with it. So to me, Wade Miley just not something I'm really interested in because of his price point.
Yeah, the price point is really what pushed me back. I could write off a bad start at Great American Ballpark and expect better things in Marlins Park, but last night they were kind of on one, and the price point just feels uncomfortable, man. 99 plus K. We're putting them in a different league, and there's easy pivots and competition at that price point. But yeah, I guess that's the bulk of it. I do think Musgrove generally comes in way higher owned, so I don't know if I trust the 15% number. And I'm wrestling with that, but for the most part, I think we've tackled everyone that I'm engaging with in terms of my lineups.
Yeah, it's for sure an interesting pitching slate. And let's talk about these offenses now. We spent a little more time on pitching than we normally did, but I think it's a slate where there's kind of a lot of interesting talking points at pitcher. Offenses, I have to be honest, I think there's a lot of efficient ownership at offense today, and I find it to be a little hard to find anyone offense where, especially when you have basically every single team playing, it's hard to find one spot where it's I want to go crazy rostering this one team. I will say, on FanDuel, there are some teams that look kind of egregiously overowned. The only one team that stands out to me on this slate as being a very strong stack relative to ownership. I love the Houston Astros today. That is the team that I want to be building my lineups around. That's the only one team I look at as really being massively underowned in our projections as well. So we have the Houston Astros today over on, where did I put this tab? Oh, here it is. All right, so over on DK, Houston Astros only project for 2.4% ownership as a team, 7.2% chance of being a top stack, by far the most positive leverage odds. FanDuel, very similar situation, 1.4% projected ownership for Houston, so even lower than that. And still, we're looking at odds of over 7% of being a top scoring team on the slate. That is the team I want to build my lineups around, the Houston Astros. How do you feel about them?
Yeah, already one of the, a good spot, presumably against Glenn Otto. I don't have a ton of information, but I can't imagine a AAA Rangers pitchers, anything I should be running from. And the Astros is just really doggone good. I think, Alex Bregman did make the lineup. I didn't have this lineup before we went live. Michael Brantley leading off. Yeah, you can give me some of that. Looks like no Altuve. So I guess that could be a little bit of a monkey wrench, but he's an expensive monkey wrench to make this stack even more obtainable. I'm in full agreement with you. I do like the Astros quite a bit. And maybe it came at a little bit more of a discount than we expected without Altuve. I guess Gurriel and Alvarez are still going to cost you, but there's no reason to not jump on that leverage opportunity based on the top stacks tool. So I'm in there on Astros, and I didn't actually realize that they were that low projected own as a cumulative stack, because I had them at 12% in my own lineups. And I've got some decent leverage at that number.
The only player in the lineup projected for more than 2% ownership is Kyle Tucker at 7%. Everybody else, Altuve sub 1%, Yordan Alvarez 1%, Brantley 2%, 1% on Bregman, Correa, sub 1% on Yuli Gurriel. There is not a lot of ownership going here. We've got our guy. I feel like we've got a little bit of a bond with Jake Myers, because there was you talked me into him that one day, the first day he debuted in the lineup, and you're looking at Jake Myers' minor league numbers and really pointing out how good they looked. I've rostered Jake Myers as a one-off in some Astro stacks quite a bit as of late. He comes through almost all the time. He's scored 10 plus fantasy points in every game but 3 of them over the last 2 weeks. So him as a cheap player who also had good success in the minor leagues. I think that he's somebody we could plug in to reduce some of that ownership share. And the price, well, the ownership share is going to be fine either way, but it reduced the salary of the Astros bats. Meyer's always cheap on FanDuel and DK. Looking at Glenn Otto, who this is always a red flag to me. He's 25 years old. He's an unrated prospect, and he's bounced around the different minor league systems. Actually, was in the Yankees minor league system earlier in the year. He had a 4.35 ERA in AAA with the Yankees. He's had decent results with the Rangers so far this year, but it's only 20 innings that he's pitched with them. So you have to go back to his numbers from 2019, which are, fine, but he's also in rookie ball. I don't really know that much about him, but if I rely on what the scheme projection is for him, they have him projected as a 4.48 ERA guy as a reliever, and he's going to be starting today. So you then expect that to maybe say like, oh, he's a true ERA, maybe around 5 guy. And then he's also pitching against the Astros. Who knows with nerves making his MLB debut. But based on the ownership here, give me the Houston Astros pretty confidently. For you, I know you're on board with me with the Astros as well, but any other team that you're really looking to build your lineups around as far as stacks go?
For like stuff that sticks out leverage wise, for the most part, I feel like I was pretty even. I'm over to the field. I think on the Yankees, looking at that 1%, and then the 2% top stack percentage is a little light, but bias aside, I feel like that right now they're just in a groove and they're so balanced that I'm willing to give them almost 8% on a nightly basis, and I can double whammy the leverage getting against that 15% Mania ownership. Probably the Yankees would be next one up in terms of potential leverage versus the field.
I dig it. Like I said, I was high on the Yankees yesterday. Giancarlo Stanton was my home run pick on the show yesterday. I just didn't understand. It's like really Stanton. Like I don't think Kaprelian's bad, but Stanton was like 4,200 on DK yesterday, and I think he was projected for 3% ownership. He ended up being like 5% owned. Either way, it was nothing really significant. But this spot, like I just don't think Stanton should ever be as cheap as he was last time, picking up his little ownership. And then you look at today and you go, okay, well maybe something's changed. No. Today he's 4,100 and projected for 0.8% ownership. So he's gotten cheaper and less owned. Stanton absolutely crushes left-handed pitching. I'm gonna go back to back. Once again, Giancarlo Stanton is my home run pick of the day.
Hey, I know hot streaks are not quantifiable mathematically, but the eye test, when Stanton gets in one, you feel it. So yeah, he absolutely has been a lot of fun to watch. You can sign me up on that. And you also might see a beefier lineup against a lefty. Like you might see Voit start over Rizzo, or you might see him, start as the DH here. So it might even be a stronger platoon matchup against Sean Manaea, which saying that Rizzo actually does well against lefties. And then Giovanni Urshela was activated yesterday off the IL. I can't remember the last time Booney started some guy 2 days in a row off the IL. So maybe we get a little bit more creative in the infield, but yeah, you could sign me up for Yankees just about against any lefty, especially at this stage. So I'm in on that. And then the other discussion I wanted to have with you is the Dodgers versus Kyle Freeland discussion, man. Dodgers have a really nice, decent implied run total. This is that all-star lineup. I think they generally, it feels like every day they come in decently low owned, and there is some leverage left on the table if we just trust our top stacks tool as is, to where 4% doubles the field and gives us 2% leverage. But also I wouldn't mind getting to 7-8%. With my only reservation is maybe I don't have that lineup as early as I wanted to, but this is a nasty lineup, right?
It's almost too nasty though. So here's the issue. Like I was trying to hand build some Dodgers lineups earlier. You could always force yourself to any individual stack. They're also being a very low ownership. It is so hard to build 5-man stacks of this team though on DK. Yeah. It's hard to build 4-man stacks on FanDuel. We've got AJ Pollock at a reasonable price. Everybody else on DK today, 6K Trey Turner, 57 Mookie Betts, 53 for Will Smith, and you have to play him in the catcher spot. 61 for Max Muncy, 51 Chris Taylor, 55 Corey Seager. There's no way to save salary in this lineup. If you just play, the top 5 guys in the lineup, I'm going to do this really quickly on the DK app and just see what that leaves you in terms of salary. So you play the top 5 hitters in the lineup, you get so Trey Turner at second base. That's super expensive, obviously. Mookie Betts. Like there's like who else are you playing? You're just punting almost every other position at that point. You have to play Logan Gilbert at pitcher. Short's a low-owned offense. The spot against Kyle Freeland, as you know, as far as Kyle Freeland fans go, I'm close to the top, and that's really just based on him being low-owned on a lot of slates. It's not a slate I want to get to Kyle Freeland, but overall, he's a good enough pitcher to limit damage, generates a lot of ground balls. Also, even making a lot of his starts at Coors Field, he doesn't get blown up a lot there either. So, like, what are you looking at from the Dodgers? Like, unless the Dodgers go out and score like 10, 11 runs, it's hard for me to imagine them being the optimal lineup just because these price tags are so expensive.
Yeah, this is probably not the Aaron Nola, Garrett Cole lineup. This might, if you put a Venn diagram of Dodgers stacked and Andre Jackson, I bet that middle is Dodgers and Jackson highly correlated. But with that said, you might get a monkey wrench, right? Like, it wouldn't stun me if Albert Pujols made the lineup at first base or something like that. Not that that's going to move your needle quite a bit, but it might get a little bit cheaper. But I see what you're saying. Like, this is a really expensive stack. So maybe 5-man is completely out the question. But maybe I sub stack them here in 3v3 or even a 4x. So all right, that was the only other like high upside stack that kind of stuck out. I put the Dodgers at home, Freeland backed up by average bullpen. Maybe they nickel and dime him out the game and put up a couple touchdowns. So I'm gonna try to get there.
Yeah, for me, once again, the issue is just that Kyle Freeland's not a guy who really gets blown up, and the price tags are so exorbitant for the Dodgers that you really do need him to kind of get blown up to pay off the price. I'm going to throw out one other stack here. This is a terrible offense. However, I have reason for liking them. If you look at our top stacks tool, the number one projected value offense today, the team that's most likely to be the best on a points per dollar basis, it's the Texas Rangers. 10.2% chance of being the top value of the day over on DK. Over on FanDuel, also, it's going to be fairly cheap price points for the Texas Rangers, although FanDuel generally not as significant to save salary as it is on DK. But if you want to pay up for a couple of pitchers in Garrett Cole and Aaron Nola, I think making 5-man Ranger stacks on DK is the way to do it for a couple of reasons. Number one, they rate out fairly well in terms of value odds. Number two, also, there's ownership going to Jake Odorizzi, so there's leverage to be had here with the Texas Rangers. I don't generally like to roster the Rangers offense, but there's a little bit of power in there here and there, particularly with Adolis Garcia. So to me, some of the price points here are just so cheap. When you have Andy Ibanez sub 3K, Nick Solak sub 3K, he homered yesterday. DJ Peters, he's hitting fifth, he's sub 3K. Like, it's almost this entire lineup is 2,500 or below. So considering those price points, I actually like getting overweights to the field on the Rangers.
Yeah, I don't know if you could sell me on a full send here, but I don't mind having some Aaron shares of Ibanez, Garcia, guys like that, just kind of sprinkle in. The other day I looked at this lineup and it was like 5 guys, literally 2K on DraftKings. I mean, literally 2K, like not exaggerating. So I thought that was a pretty funny. Today, a lot of them have moved up to a staggering 2,500. But like you said, really easy to help you fill out the double Death Star pitching lineups, the Garrett Coles, the Aaron Nolas, guys like that. I think you can give me a buy inside the 2-spot Garcia. I think that's a really fun handcuff, economically and fiscally responsible. But I don't know that I'm getting too far deeper. But like conceptually, like, I understand what you're saying. Like, they're really, really cheap. So you can get 2 aces and maybe 1 or 2 of those 6K bets and aim for the bushes.
Yeah, and there's a couple of points here. Number one is that Jake Odorizzi, and it's something that Sean V brought up in the YouTube chat that I totally agree with, that Jake Odorizzi isn't good, which is a consideration. And number two, he's picking up a lot of ownership. And whenever there's a pitcher that I don't think is particularly good that's picking up a lot of ownership, I'm kind of inclined to stack against him. There's only 1% projected ownership to go to the Rangers today on DK and FanDuel. So for me, the Rangers, that's a low-owned value stack that I kind of like getting to. Any team for you? We only have a couple minutes here before we have to wrap up. We have to cut a little bit short because we have the NFL preseason live before lock coming up next. But is there anybody who you are looking at as a cheaper stack that you like to get to, a la the Rangers?
So I think a very interesting conversation that we haven't had here is Erod versus the Indians, right? Like, I feel like Erod's a guy that we generally respect as a big strikeout guy, has those big game potentials. But when he blows up, he blows up. And this is an Indians team that on paper, I do kind of prefer against lefties a little bit more. Yesterday, they were really, really nice for me. 1 through 5 of this projected Indians lineup, like, you could sell me on against, your typical lefty. I do think Erod, when he's on, he's better than many lefties. But this is still an Indians lineup that looks good. And another thing the Indians did yesterday is they ran at will. I don't know if they had something on the pitcher or the catcher, but they were stealing bases like it was their job. So is there a Erod versus Indians seesaw that you're tilting one way or the other?
No, I mean, it's a team we have them project for 1.6% ownership, a team 1.7% chance to be a top stack. So low owned team, low owned chance of being a top stack. I don't mind some of them as one-offs. One thing I'll also give out is a Franmil Reyes in our home run player prop tool. We do have him as the best overall bet to homer today. He's plus 490, considering his power against left-handed pitching. Erod, who's sometimes been prone to power from the right side of the bat. I don't mind that. So that would be the way that I mostly want to get exposure to the Indians, is just as a Franmil Reyes one-off. But other than that, not a team that I am massively interested in. But that is going to have to wrap it up for us today, guys. We do have another show coming up after us, so don't go anywhere. Also, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. We've got all kinds of content coming up. NFL, MMA tomorrow, NASCAR over the weekend also. Everything. We cover all the sports over here at Awesemo.